Hello there, very good morning to you. The new Prime Minister has warned he can either raise defence spending or gamble with Britain's future.
With just one day to go until Sir Keir Starmer's first NATO meeting, the threat of a global conflict looms large.
All eyes on Wednesday's NATO summit as army chiefs call on the Prime Minister to commit to giving 3% of GDP to defence. But where will that money come from?
NATO braces to decide Ukraine's future as Kyiv mourns the deaths of 40 people killed in Russia's most aggressive attack for almost 2 years.
David Cameron quits frontline politics as Sunak's shadow cabinet is announced, just in time for the Commons to resume today.
And in the sport this morning, the referee for England's Euro 24 semi-final with Holland tomorrow has served a 6-month ban for match fixing. Novak Djokovic thought centre court booed and disrespected him yesterday, but I'm not so sure about that. And Wales are set to appoint a new manager later today.
And to talk about today, some of it heavy. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place for tonight and tomorrow across parts of northern Scotland. But it will be raining everywhere all day today. Join me later for all the details.
1 minute past 6 o'clock. A very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Well, ahead of the NATO summit in Washington, it takes place tomorrow, the Prime Minister has been urged to raise defence spending.
Well, this comes as a children's hospital in Kyiv was hit by a major airstrike as Russia launched a barrage of missiles across Ukraine. Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray, joins us now. Everybody's acting very, this is very unexpected, but there is a war between these two countries.
Yes, well, I mean, you generally, with new governments, you will get the defence lobby, people and ex-army chiefs saying, we need to up defence spending because we always do. And, of course, you've got this NATO summit this week. But in particular, at this moment, the world is looking extremely precarious, not just in Ukraine, but you've got China and Taiwan and so on. We probably do need to up defence spending, but it's not so long ago, 2.5% was considered quite a big jump. Rishi Sunak committed to that.
At the last minute, we should point out, he committed to that. He was always saying exactly what Sir Keir Starmer's saying now, which is when economic conditions allow. Yes. There was always this kind of unicorn situation that we hadn't quite achieved.
And we actually haven't yet fully committed to it yet. So I think pushing for 3% is ambitious, but it might happen. Keir Starmer's very keen to signal to the world that he's going to be strong on defence. He's going to be strong in defence of Ukraine. He's going to go to NATO this week. And it wouldn't surprise me if he agreed at least to the 2.5, if not the 3. The problem for Labour, though, is, as you said at the beginning, where does this money come from? Because they keep saying we're going to be sensible with the nation's finances, but they're under a lot of pressure to spend in all sorts of areas. And this is one of them. This is
but 3% may be regarded as sensible.
I think it probably is sensible at a time when our army's being asked to do, our air forces are being asked to completely remodernise and carry out very complicated operations around the Yemen and so on. Probably is.
So how would you pay for it? Because they've already said they're not raising taxes for working people. Are they going to raise taxes elsewhere for other people? Pensions, for example, inheritance tax, these sort of stealth taxes on the tax threshold, because they don't want to borrow any more money and they don't want to cut public services.
The poor, much battered British middle and lower classes will have to carry the burden as ever. And yes, I think taxes are going to have to go up. That's inevitable. Securonomics, as Rachel Reeves likes to call it, will involve greater taxation on the population for some time to come.
What do you think of this airstrike in general and the targets that were involved here? Was this a miscalculation? Did this missile go astray? Or was this deliberate, do you think?
We never know. We never know with Russia. We never know with Ukraine, because both sides are spinning all the time what their agenda is. All we know is that this bloody conflict, I mean bloody not in the sweary sense, it's carrying on and it's costing a lot of lives. And
children as well, yeah.
And we often see, men in Ukraine who don't want to fight are now being dragged to the front line. Lots of Russian boys are dying every day. It's very, very sad, and it just will not stop. And the terrible thing is it's so intractable now, and there's no real obvious ending in sight.
What about this NATO summit? Obviously, the timing is linked with this sort of show of force from Putin. Lots of talk about President Biden and his mental capacity at the moment. But actually, funnily enough, NATO might be quite a good sort of showcase for him. He spent so long working on foreign policy in Washington. He was vice president for Obama, travelled the world.
Yeah.
You know, this might be just the perfect timing for him to kind of secure and shore up his position, just as he's written to all of his, what do you call them, senators?
He certainly rates himself on foreign policy. Yeah. He always has. But Robert Gates famously said he's got every single foreign policy decision wrong for the last 4 decades. He will have a teleprompter at NATO, so that will help. He seems to be able to get through a speech with a teleprompter, but he's getting a lot of flack at the moment. And he tried to go on the offensive yesterday, called into this TV show, didn't appear by video, interestingly. They think so that he can use notes. It'll be if he has a major slip up at this summit. I think the calls for him to go will become overwhelming. That said, if he's not willing to go, how do you get rid of it?
Yeah, and also someone was explaining to me that actually if he did suddenly decide to step down, all of the funds that have been raised under his name, effectively, cannot be used for whoever would take over. So that's a huge concern about what to do with all the cash.
Unless it's Kamala Harris.
Unless it's Kamala Harris.
Because Kamala Harris is on the ticket.
Yeah.
Although everybody thinks there's so much cash involved, the Democrats will surely find a way of getting around it and just get every donor to repledge it to the candidate.
But they might not like the new candidate. That's my point. You know, if they pledged it.
They probably won't. But increasingly, a lot of the donors are saying we can't go on with Joe Biden, and they're now talking about a blitz primary. You know, where they'll do a sort of mini primary with Oprah Winfrey is going to be. They'll do little debates with Oprah Winfrey, Michelle Obama, interviewing various candidates as a sort of little mini TV spectacular, which would be great for the news industry. I'm not sure it would be great for the Democratic Party.
No, I don't think so. I think he would be particularly weak in a Oprah Winfrey style type interview.
Yeah.
And also, he's got his spokespeople saying that he's not being treated for Parkinson's disease, for instance. And if they actually think whatever he has been officially diagnosed as or being treated for, there's something there. Because a blind man on a galloping horse can see that this man is not right. So I don't care if it's Parkinson's or what it is, there is something ailing this man and everybody can see it.
Well, yes, and what I find particularly phony at the moment is the sort of Washington press corps who've all known about this. And you talk to any Washington journalist who's been in the White House lobby for the last 4 years, they've been talking about this for ages, but now they're feigning this. Why did the White House not square with us? That this was going on. It's been obvious to anyone looking at Joe Biden. I met Joe Biden very briefly in 2020. I could tell there was something not right with him then. And it's got a lot worse, and it's getting dramatically worse this year. And they were all covering for him. They really were. And the incestuousness between the Washington press corps and the Democratic Party is one of the reasons why we've gone on with this charade of pretending that Joe Biden is fine for a long time when he clearly isn't.
The awful thing is him pretending he's fine. He either doesn't know, in which case he has to be stood down, or he does know, and therefore he's lying to us and it's fraudulent, and his family should intervene on this as well.
I think one of the interesting things about Joe Biden is his ego is Trump-like in its size. He's an extremely proud man. He genuinely believes it's his destiny, a divine destiny, to beat Donald Trump and to do it again. And it's very hard to persuade someone that that's not their destiny.
I thought it was the letter. He said, nothing but the Lord Almighty will stop me from running in November. And then you just imagine all these Democrats on their knees praying more ardently than ever before.
And saying, we're running out of patience with people telling me to quit. Well, people are running out of patience with it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you. Speak again later. Thank you very much indeed. 9 minutes now past 6 o'clock. The election has been and gone. The newly elected MPs are arriving at the House of Commons today, and so many of them for the first time.
Well, over the past 6 weeks, Labour has been gearing up for today's transition to be as smooth as possible, and our reporter Adam Cherry has this report.
So, you're a new MP elected for the very first time. Congratulations, well done, you made it. You're here in Parliament. What actually happens when you get here? How do you find your way around? How do you even log into your email system? Fear not, we've got some answers for you. Or at least, I've spoken to the people who do. Take a look at this. New MPs are about to stroll into the iconic Palace of Westminster for the very first time. For many of them, this is a dream come true. Of course, starting a new job can be intimidating. Luckily, while Parliament was dissolved, the House administration team has been hard at work to prepare for the new kids on the block.
We have set up something called the New Members Reception Area here in Portcullis House, and at that we equip members with the information and the things that they need to get themselves up and running in their new role as parliamentarians. There will be induction activities, not just this New Members Reception Area. There'll be a chamber briefing when it'll be the first time that members sit in the chamber. They won't have been sworn in at that point, but we want to take them through the courtesies and conventions of that place so that they know a bit about everything from, you know, the annunciator bell sounding, how to ask a question, all of those sorts of things.
New members will enter through Cromwell Green and head to Westminster Hall. There they will check in at reception, receive their welcome pack and get paired with a seasoned buddy.
So that's an experienced member of House staff that will be able to help them navigate this place.
Westminster is a bit of a labyrinth and new MPs often need a helping hand. Fortunately, the palace doorkeepers have got their backs.
One of the things we kind of do as homework is I normally stay up at night and watch some of the election results come in, getting to know some of the new faces, what will come in. We also have the doorkeeper Bible of a book of faces of members.
They've got to do some learning as well, haven't they? So do they ever get lost? Do you have to help them, show them around? What's that like?
Some of the ones I've done before, it's a very exciting time with lots of new members. And yes, some of them will not have been on this building before. And it can be quite daunting and they need guidance and help and assistance. And that's what we're all there for. You know, yes, they'll get to know us, but we've got to get to know them quicker. That's what doorkeepers are known for, you know.
So a busy few weeks ahead with a lot to learn. Just don't forget to smile for that class photo. Adam Cherry, GB News, London.
Russia has denied deliberately targeting a children's hospital in Kyiv, instead claiming the damage was caused by Kyiv's own air defence missile.
Well, dozens are reported to have been killed and over 120 injured after missiles hit multiple cities across the country.
Let's now speak to Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. Robert, what do you make of what happened yesterday?
It was a hell of a bombardment, and it's worrying how many Russian missiles got through. As you rightly hinted in the headlines, don't take any notice of what Putin or Putin's people are saying about whether they deliberately targeted it or not. They said they only attack military and aviation targets. It was a daylight attack. They've got all the systems. They know exactly what they were hitting. And I think that was no air defence.
And they would have deliberately targeted a hospital?
I'm not sure quite about that. They would deliberately have targeted a residential area because they're up to a game of terrorising the population and stripping out the economy. And we're not paying enough attention to that. They're also using these missiles to trash agricultural land. They're going into the agricultural land to close down various industries associated, such as fertiliser, cooking oil, and they have seized over 50,000 pieces of agricultural machinery and taken it back to Russia. Now, that tells you an awful lot about what's really going on there.
Now, we've got this big world summit, this defence meeting tomorrow in Washington. What about air defence systems to protect places like Kyiv? How much pressure will the West be under to supply those?
In a word, enormous. They have put in Patriot batteries, but it's 3 4s, 3s and 9s, and they need comprehensive air defence of civilian targets. The infrastructure has been smashed to bits in many, many areas, but I think it's where NATO and the American leadership is really open for criticism. They knew darn well that the air war, the close air war, and it's now what's called the deep air war, is decisive. And they have got aircraft coming up over Russia, staying over Russia, and launching glide bombs, simple cruise missiles, in quantity. And yet the Biden administration is saying, oh, no, you can't use our weapons to go into Russia in depth. They've done a bit into Russia around Kharkiv. There's got to be a big sorting out, as Harry Potter would say. They need a sorting hat, because NATO and the European Union have got to get their priorities. Because people are saying, are you going to Trump-proof the alliance? So against a possible future Trump presidency, who will be less keen on supporting Ukraine and the European effort. Absolutely so, because it isn't just Trump. Europe hasn't done the heavy lifting, which it has hinted that it would do at different times, and it's got to do more. That's where Starmer becomes key.
Yeah, there's definitely been growing fatigue, hasn't there, Freddie Gray? And I suppose we're beginning to see an emboldened Putin. We've seen him doing this visit to North Korea. We've got this sort of devil's pact with China, if you like. And he's aware that we're likely to have a Trump presidency in the autumn. Do you think that that is why we've seen such an aggressive act, the worst in a couple of years, yesterday?
Quite possibly, always testing the kind of limits of Western endurance and Western strength. That's what Putin does. I do find the Trump-proofing talk quite funny because, I mean, you know, the reason why all these NATO...
Not my expression.
I know it's not. I'm sorry, I wasn't accusing you of that. But you hear it a lot now, don't you? And I find it odd because the reason all these countries are now spending more than 2%, a lot of them are, not all of them, by any means, but is because Donald Trump pushed them to do it. And Donald Trump, for all his flaws, you always have to say for all his flaws after you say Donald Trump, but Donald Trump, for all his flaws, pushed quite hard on military spending, and he pushed Europe to spend more. If only they'd spent even more, we might be in a better position now on Ukraine than we are, because we're running out of money.
So the question on the front of the Express, you see the headline screaming out there today, so what's it to be? Tax rises or cuts to our services? Do you see Keir Starmer being pushed, coming up with that 3% that he's been asked for in defence spending?
Let's be fair about that. General Sir Patrick Sanders, who's very fast out of the blocks from retirement. It's very unusual. I know him quite well. But to start gabbing away to the press within a month of retiring is very, very strange. I'm sorry to say, I think there's a lot of, within the defence community, a lot of office politics going on here. Yes, they need to spend more. But unusually for me, they've got to spend it very carefully and not rush to it. The MOD itself, very badly organised ministry, and the services structure, they need a thorough working over at the moment, and a lot of seemingly at their time promising programmes, including the aircraft carrier programmes, must be re-examined. They're wasting a lot of money, I think, on quite dubious promises for tomorrow or even the day after tomorrow. It's what we need now.
You would question the aircraft carrier programme then, would you?
Well, it's still not up and running to full capacity, and it's not going to happen for anything from 8 to 10 years. It's pretty expensive. Mind you, there are very good, very accomplished defence officials in the past. Very famous one called Sir Michael Quinlan, who was a real brain, who warned them about this. Don't mortgage the future of the Navy on two very expensive, very large ships, which will not be able to operate into capacity. And I'm not sure for what they're conceived to do, they're really the right thing at the right time. So they should be down there dealing with the Houthis now. They're not capable of doing it.
Because they haven't got the right aircraft for them, or what?
You said it.
OK, right.
They're very, very expensive. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, it's not against Trump, but against America. The F-35 programme, this enormously expensive aircraft, which is causing actually real grief and a lot of, I think, misappropriated funding from the European allies who've been, in one way or another, forced to buy it.
OK, well, that leaves us with a whole big situation. As I said, in front of the Express today, what's it to be? Tax rises or cuts to the armed forces? This morning, we would like your views. We would like you to get in touch, and that is the address, and we'll share those throughout the programme. Robert, Freddie, thank you for the moment very much indeed.
6:19, let's take a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom this morning. And later today, the brand new Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, will be meeting with junior doctors to begin talks to try and end their 20-month dispute over pay and conditions. Junior doctors have been in gridlock with the government as they're pushing for a 35% pay rise. They say it would restore their pay to 2008 levels. The meeting is a significant development on both ends and could see the new government land their first major win.
And a day on from the shock French election result, which saw Marine Le Pen's far-right national rally underperform, the left-wing coalition, which secured the most votes, has revealed its policies, including a 90% tax for the rich and reducing the retirement age from 64 to 60.
And smoking-related deaths have reached a record high, despite fewer people taking up the habit than ever before. Roughly 160 people are diagnosed with cancers associated with smoking every day, which marks a nearly 20% increase compared to 20 years ago. Charities are urging the new government to push ahead with the Conservatives' tobacco and vapes bill, which would see anyone born from 2009 essentially banned from buying cigarettes in their lifetime.
Well, we are into Tuesday. Let's find out what way the weather is going, because
Grim.
so far nobody knows.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us, expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, that may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here. But the heaviest rain further north in this band, and as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for one or two showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it's a good time of the day to introduce a little light relief and hopefully a big help to your bank balance, because it is
£30,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest prize so far. Here's how it could be yours.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Still to come, it's the sports news. Paul Coit will be here with all of that in just a moment.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
No one wants their child to be a fussy eater. But what is the secret to expanding your child's culinary horizons?
Is there a way to get kids away from the kids' menu, the fish fingers, the chips? Joining us now is the UK's top-selling author of children's cookery books, Isabel Carmel. Good morning, Isabel.
Thank you. So lovely to be here.
So, first of all, what's the issue with kids just having the traditional easy meals like fish fingers, you know, chips, beans?
It really depends if they've got preservatives in them, if they're full of salt. So I like to make them myself, and it's really easy. So I make my own chicken glazed nuggets, and super easy to make using proper pieces of chicken. You can cook them in the air fryer now, which is absolutely brilliant, so you need to fry them. And I think that it's really important that children grow up loving good food, because they make their minds up by the age of 5 what they like and what they don't like, and it's quite difficult to change their minds after that. But it's good to know that fussy eating is genetic. It's not to do with your cooking.
Oh,
that's
right?
not to say that you can't do something about it. So I've written many, many books, and I have an app with 1,000 recipes on it, and a lot of how to make your own junk food, how to make your own isoles out of fresh fruit.
Yes.
How to make your own pizzas. I make the most amazing homemade pizza. I actually brought you some cookies here.
So these are your books here. So my first cookbook, that's for how old children?
That's from the age of 1.
OK, and you've got a weaning one at the end, the baby one?
Yes, that's my very first book. I lost my first child. It was really sad. She died at the age of 3 months. And my second child was the world's worst eater. And I wrote that book as my legacy to Natasha, never thinking that it would start a whole career.
Oh, bless you.
It sold millions of copies, and it's still popular.
Is it quite pivotal and important that you introduce kids to the weaning stage, or, you know, how important?
It's very important, because the processed weaning food in pouches or jars, it's heated, so a lot of the vitamins aren't there anymore, so making your own is so easy and much cheaper.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Let's serve you up some sport now in the capable hands of Mr. Paul Coit today. And Wimbledon, what's happening?
Novak Djokovic beat Holger Rune in 3 sets yesterday. I mean, it's a really bad start for Holger. He lost the first 12 points of the match, so already 3 down from the start. So he's on the back foot. But the problem is the crowd. Now,
he's very popular, and Djokovic possibly not.
Correct. Now, I think there's a little bit of confusion here with Novak Djokovic, because when people were cheering for Rune... Now, this happens with Bruce Springsteen. It also happens when you want a footballer to shoot. So, you know, with Bruce Springsteen, if you go to a Bruce Springsteen concert and think, why is everybody going, Bruce, Bruce? And it's the same with...
Sounds like boo.
Exactly, and that's what happened with Holger Rune, because they're going, Rune, Rune. So there's Djokovic is thinking... You know, look, that's him. That's like the fake violin, because it was really getting to him. So he did an interview afterwards, and he said, yes, he said, I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's an excuse to boo. I've been on the tour for more than 20 years. I know all the tricks. So he knows the tricks of the crowd. I didn't know the crowd had tricks, did you?
A very polite crowd, I'd say. I don't think anyone would boo.
I don't think so. So he's saying that... So when the interviewer was saying, look, they were cheering Rune, not disrespecting you, he said, they were, I'm not expecting it, I'm not accepting it, and he was certain that they were booing. He said, I've been on the tour 20 years. So it's like, well, actually... Calm down just a little bit, Novak. Now, he was asked afterwards. Now, they had the press conference about 90 minutes after the game. So he calmed down a bit, and this is what he had to say.
something that they choose, how they choose to behave or how they choose to support the player is really up to them. And yes, I mean, you could argue that maybe
there's a fan blowing on
a chair umpire or whoever can, step in certain moments and calm them down, or but there's not much you can do. I mean, you're not gonna take out the whole section of the crowd or stadium out because they're misbehaving.
One thing that makes me chuckle, have you seen his kids watching him play?
Novak, yeah.
They just read books and colour in and could not be less interested. So if he's got a problem with the crowd,
quite frankly, what they're doing
start at home.
They're taking tickets away from deserving Wimbledon viewers. But anyway, he doesn't like it. I'm torn. I don't know about how you feel about Djokovic. At first, so I never liked him, and then he wins me over. I remember when we saw him playing at the Australian Open, and then he was doing the tricks and stuff, and then he was having guests on there, and I thought, no, maybe I do like him. And then I see that, but he's a winner, he's a tough cookie, so that's in
He's a machine. He's a machine.
He is a machine.
Felix Zewer, he's the referee for the Netherlands-England game on Wednesday. And there's all this row. I think this is a press row. I think the press are building this up. But anyway, 20-odd years ago, he got a 6-month ban.
6-month ban for match fixing.
Match fixing, taking a bribe.
Which is never good. Never a good look for a referee, is it, really,
then
to be honest with you.
Jude Bellingham has opened his mouth about this, and he was involved in some sort of contretemps with him while he was in Germany. Yeah. So where are we at with this? Should the ref be replaced?
So this is the question: should he be the referee at the semi-final of the Euros when he's taken a bribe in before? It's a long time. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
It's a long time.
It was 300 quid. I mean, I'm happy to offer 500 quid to get a good result tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But I think those days have gone. It was a Dortmund-Bayern Munich game in 2021. There were some pretty bad decisions that were made during the game, and Jude Bellingham said, if you give a referee that's match fixed before the biggest game in Germany, what do you expect?
Well, if I was Jude Bellingham, I would have expected a fine, which he did get.
Which he did get.
Yeah.
And it was a lot more than the 300 euros that was earned from the actual match fixing, which was way back. But I don't think there's any problem there. But, see, it could work both ways, because if Jude Bellingham is playing in the game and people think, oh, yeah, he may pick on Jude Bellingham, he wouldn't dare.
He wouldn't dare.
So he may go the other way and actually prove that he has no problem with Jude Bellingham. So, anyway, whatever. But there you go. I don't think there's going to be any change in the referee, and I don't think there's anything we need to worry about.
So is it Spain v France today?
Yeah, Spain v France today. France still have not scored any goals in open play in the Euros so far. So Portugal 0-0, they won on penalties. Belgium, they won on an own goal. Poland was a penalty, Kylian Mbappe. Another own goal against Austria. Didier Deschamps, the French manager, was accused by a Swedish journalist, said, you're boring, that the French team is boring. So he suggested that they just watch another match. And France, they're apparently, against Spain, they're going to play a new system straight down the middle, because apparently right wing hasn't had much success in France.
Who sang that? Bing Crosby sang that. And it went straight down
the middle. That's it, yeah.
Straight down the middle.
I played golf yesterday, by the way.
Did you? Did you?
I did play golf yesterday.
Oh.
It's my one game of the year. And then I realised I'm so bad.
Yeah?
I thought you looked tired today.
Do I? Yeah.
How many hours were you out there?
Too long. It was longer than most. And I took a buggy as well. All
right. Now, listen, Craig Bellamy, Wales, they're set to name him as the new manager. He's quite a combative guy. Good choice?
Yeah, I don't see why not. The only thing is it's only management experience. He's never actually been a manager of a team. He's been with Burnley, and he was acting head coach before Scott Parker arrived earlier in the week. 78 times he's played for Wales, Welsh legend, assistant manager Vincent Kompany and Anderlecht and Burnley, and he's gone off to Bayern Munich, so he's probably thought, I'd like the call from Bayern Munich. That hasn't come. Welsh manager's job. You can't go wrong if you're a Welsh legend.
Well, keep us posted, mate. Keep us posted.
Raphael van der Vaart, by the way, Dutch legend, will be with us. Over 110 times he's played for the Netherlands. He'll be with us to talk the England-Netherlands game just after 8:30.
7:20.
8:30.
8:30.
Another hour. I'll get him on earlier if you fancy.
I know, we'll give him 8:30 will be fine.
He's a fine golfer as well.
Still to come this morning, we're going to be through the newspapers next, and we're doing that in the company of Ella Whelan and Alex Armstrong. Stay with us.
the latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 26 and 25 from Chain Bar to Brighouse. Mersey Ferry remains suspended because of an ongoing technical problem. Train services have been stopped between Coventry and Birmingham International after something got caught in the overhead wires. On the M25 in Essex, there's a lane closed where a car's broken down on the clockwise exit at junction 28 for the A12. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues getting onto the M25 again this morning because of roadworks, and also in Kent the A251 is closed in both directions near to Badlesmere Lees and on the stretch between Faversham and Ashford after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
In World War I, 309 men from Britain and the Commonwealth never came home because they'd been shot at dawn. The majority were killed for desertion, cowardice and sleeping at post. Appearing at their court-martials and told they'd brought shame on their country, these men had no opportunity to defend themselves and were executed by a firing squad. The National Memorial Arboretum launched a fundraising campaign to restore the memorial, which has stood for more than 20 years.
Thank you to your viewers for their support for the fundraising campaign, and thanks to the generosity of so many people, we've been able to replace all 309 of the posts that represent those young men that were shot in the First World War. Restoration of this really precious memorial.
The centrepiece of the memorial is the young soldier, blindfolded and facing his execution. In September 1916, Private Harry Farr was ordered to the front. Already suffering from shell shock, he was overwhelmed and refused his orders. He was court-martialed, and in a trial lasting only 20 minutes, he was sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he faced the firing squad without a blindfold. Janet Booth is Private Farr's granddaughter and was part of the public campaign to have those who were shot at dawn officially pardoned.
When I asked my gran, do you know where I could find Harry's grave? And she looked at my mother and there was this sort of look between them, and then she said, well, he hasn't got a grave because they didn't warrant, he deserved one because he was shot as a coward and had let his country down. We can come here as a family and pay our respects to him, and also for all the other families, it's somewhere to come and remember their loved ones.
The People's Channel.
I've been on an airplane which has been hit by lightning.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know it's safe to be on them when they get hit by lightning, but
I don't know, I thought
terrifying.
I was sitting with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland and the Chief Constable, and I thought, well, it couldn't go down with these two on it. And me. But no, we're just talking about bad weather and flying with in airplanes and things. But apparently it's okay because there's nothing grounded, you see.
Yeah.
So it has to be grounded.
They're like Faraday cages planes, aren't they? They can't be damaged by them, but it's still quite a terrifying prospect.
Oh, there was a jolt and there was, it was pretty bad. There we go. And that was Alex Armstrong, and this is Ella Whelan, and they have the newspapers, and the front pages read like this.
The Guardian this morning leading with Labour's plans to fix the front door of the NHS by diverting billions to local surgeries.
We're going to be talking about that. The Telegraph leads with J.K. Rowling's attack on the new government over the appointment of Annalise Dodds as a women's minister. All that's got to do with sex issues, obviously. The
Daily Mail imploring NATO and the new government to increase defence spending after Russia killed dozens in an attack on a children's cancer hospital in Ukraine.
The Times also leads with the pressure on Keir Starmer to raise defence spending after that bombing.
And The Express asks whether it'll be tax rises or cuts to public services under the new government.
Well, Alex, let's start with the military situation, the big conference tomorrow. Keir Starmer under pressure to raise national spending to 3% on defence.
Yep.
Will he be forced to do that? Will he do that? What do you think?
Well, look, defence chiefs are always wanting more money to spend, but they make quite a compelling case over the last year or so. They're saying this is more dangerous than 1945. They're saying this new axis of China, Iran and Russia is lethal. I mean, they're nuclear powers now. We're talking a whole different world, aren't we? But what the real message here is that we've been donating so much ammunition and so many resources to Ukraine that we could only fight a small war ourselves for no longer than a month. And one of the defence chiefs said that it's chilling if he were to tell you how long a war would last with Britain. He said it'd be chilling. You put your hairs up on the side of on the back of your neck. So whether he's forced to do that, I mean, they're calling for 3%. What I think would be interesting is an incoming Trump presidency. We saw what happened last time Donald Trump was president, where he went round, bravado to the NATO summit and started flexing out, saying, you need to pay more money to defence. We're not paying for all of this. And I think that would be the time in which you see European countries put more money down. At the end of the day, nobody can afford it.
But that wouldn't give us more defence. It takes the spending onus off the Americans.
Correct.
But it puts it on the Europeans. It doesn't necessarily increase anything.
That's true. That's very true. And the big question is, where would the money come from? I mean, we're already taxed to the highest on record.
Well,
so,
that is the question, and there it is on the front of the Express. They're asking the big question today, and we're asking you at home watching this morning, what's it to be, tax rises or cuts to our services?
Well, I mean, the Labour Party has made, certainly in the electoral campaign, made some noises about the G word, growth, and I don't want to be cynical about that. I think I want to spur them on in that direction. But everybody knows that unless you actually create, you can't just cut a bit of money and send it here unless you actually create some growth and wealth, and through boosting the economy through production, nothing's going to happen. And we don't have the details on what they're going to do with that yet.
All these infrastructure projects, building on the grey belt, and these green economy that they're planning lots of jobs and production there.
And that all sounds great in a headline, but I mean, you can't quite marry being green, which essentially means anti-growth these days, and green growth don't really go together. You have to pick one. It's certainly not quick. And just on the defence thing, I mean, we have this problem. The potential for a Trump presidency also brings the potential for America to really step back from its commitments to Ukraine, because the Republicans have such a problem with sending spending. And Ukraine winning, or rather Russia losing, isn't just important because, obviously, as we see on the front pages, I mean, children are dying in hospitals that have been bombed. It's because of the stake of the sense of national sovereignty and democracy, and everything that Ukraine means is so important in a world in which those ideas are devalued and spurned. Democracy has become something that we really have to fight for on an ideological level. So I would want to see Keir Starmer or any Western government really stepping up support for that. Defence needs a bit more spending. It also needs the people to do it. I mean, you can throw as much money as you want at it, but a new generation needs to be willing to fight.
OK, this big conference will get underway tomorrow. Joe Biden will be there. What should be done about Joe Biden? Are you worried? Are you perturbed? Can you see that he's suffering from something? Because the spokespeople say he's suffering from nothing.
Which is a completely insane position to put forward. I mean, you don't want to be nasty. There are plenty... There's a sort of ageist tone to a lot of the criticism of Joe Biden, which you don't want to be silly about, but there are plenty...
He's just ill. It's nothing even to do with age. I mean, if I could stand now and not see that, just see me here instead, because he's...
Yeah, it's...
and if you're going to stand and tell me there is absolutely nothing wrong with a grown-up who stands like that and does that, the man is ill, and it's very sad.
And it's, whatever about Joe Biden and his decision to, run or not. Actually, I did an exclusive interview with Lionel Shriver a few days ago, and she's called him a narcissist because she said this is just unfair. I think the problem is with the Biden administration, because they are... One, it's cruel. It looks cruel to be putting an individual through all of this when he clearly isn't able to. But also, the problem isn't just is he fit now, but is he fit in a month's time, a year's time? I mean, it's a long job.
4 years' time.
And I think what it signals is this total lack of vision within the Democrats. I mean, the fact that Americans have the tragedy of choosing between an incompetent, incapable man who's obviously suffering from some kind of mental impairment and, to my mind, a madman in Trump is terrible.
He's convicted of crimes, you know, whether or not you want to sort of make it that sort of binary choice. But, I mean, who to blame? Jill Biden, the Democrats, the donors? You know, what's the resolution to this? There are plenty of capable people in the United States of America waiting in the wings.
Yeah, there's a lot of complications to replacing Joe Biden. All this money they've raised through donations has to go under electoral law in America to Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. If they remove both of them from the ticket, that money has to be paid back.
And what would Kamala Harris be like?
Well, she's even more unpopular than Joe Biden. So I don't think she'd be a winning ticket. And what Democrats have to look for now is a winning ticket against Trump. And there's only one person that beats Trump of all the Democrat candidates, and that's Michelle Obama. And so I have my money that she is going to be... I know she said a million times that she's not going to do it, but they all say that. And I have my money that they're going to ship her in last minute to win this election. And she will win it if she stands because she's so popular. But, you know, there's a lot of complications here. I actually think they're going to keep Joe Biden going right to the last minute. It avoids criticism of a new candidate coming in. Then they're able to say, have distance from the administration, say, I'm a fresh face, Trump's an old face, and then they change the whole narrative right at the last minute.
The new government... I have sympathy with them on a number of fronts because I just look and I think if you're to change things, where do you get the money from, including that defence spending? Labour's coming up with an idea that they should take money away from hospitals and give it to GP surgeries. Your view on that, Alex?
Yeah, look, I mean, this isn't going to fix the problem. This is moving money around to solve something somewhere else. I mean, we were talking about this in the break, Eamonn. You know, the NHS in general is crumbling. Hospitals are crumbling, and there's not enough beds to seat people on. And so you're taking money from one place that's underfunded and moving it to somewhere else. The whole thing, in my opinion, the problem with the NHS is a structural problem. There is a lot of money that goes into the National Health Service, but it's not spent wisely.
Yeah, but this is a structural change, and this is about going to where the front door, if you like, to prevent people coming further down the line with more complicated conditions to A&E. I mean, if people had actual access to their GPs that was a decent level of care, then there would be less pressure on the hospitals. What it doesn't address, of course, is the huge elephant in the room, which is social care, and all those people who are, to use an awful phrase, bed blockers. But if we could clear a lot of those spaces and make sure that people are going and getting a decent primary care at their GP, the hospitals surely would be more efficient.
Well, we'd like to think so, right? I mean, look, I think anyone's willing for a bit of change at this point, and I certainly want to give them a chance to do something. Just to tell the audience what Streeting's planning. You know, he's obviously the first thing he wants to do is sort out the junior doctor strike, and then he's saying that he's going to reverse this sort of slow move away from doctor surgeries to hospitals and actually put it back the other way, promising his pledge is that you'll be able to see a doctor within 14 days and you'll be able to see the same doctor for the whole family. It's quite a big pledge, so it'll take time.
Well, I mean, Wes Streeting made all these sort of relatively good-sounding noises before the election campaign kicked off about saying, I'm going to get tough with the NHS and I'm going to go where no one's gone before, I'm going to say what no one said. And that was all hinting at the idea of reform, that you would make certain bits of it private or that you would, you know, change it fundamentally. And that's all kind of dissipated now, I think.
It's early days. I mean, he's meeting with the BMA today and there's all this stuff about, he's going to make progress where none's been made before. Let's see, shall we?
Yeah, let's see. But if you were taking, you know, billions of pounds from hospitals, I'm not quite sure it would be billions, but you could strip a lot of money away from the sort of the managerial level of hospitals that waste a lot of money, the stupid policies, all the sort of fluff.
Versus inclusion managers for 100.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't quite be billions, but that would be a start.
But pay for a doctor something.
That would annoy a lot of their supporters doing that kind of thing, so...
Let's go to holidaymakers, Ella. Thousands being stranded as flights are axed on Groundhog Day. This is in the Metro, front page.
Yes, so a variety of things. I mean, as always, summer holidays are never as simple as you want them to be. There are a kind of number of things happening. So two of BA's planes were struck by lightning, which is terrifying, as you heard Eamonn and Alex talking about at the start of this segment. So they have to be taken away and checked. There's a big problem with French French traffic air controllers, the staffing issues, but also questions around strikes. I mean, I've just come back from Ireland, and just as we were about to go, Aer Lingus had their run of strikes and Ryanair couldn't catch up. Dublin, nobody should ever travel from Dublin Airport on a Sunday, I'll just say that. It's literally the hell on earth.
Yeah.
But, you know, we are obviously, particularly in this country, a nation that likes to go away at this time of year with kids. I don't understand why it can't be something that is planned for. Every year we come to this situation and 1 or 2 planes are taken out and the whole show goes to pot. So it's like an unwillingness to, there's such an anti-holiday sentiment around that there's an unwillingness to plan for this. I think it's a real shame. Maybe it's, you end up being cynical because you start thinking, is it just because they want us to stop flying and they're all so miserable? But maybe that's just what I felt like on Sunday in Dublin Airport.
I totally get what you want, and the idea that Aer Lingus and so many companies like them do not want to pay pilots the going rate. And if they could, they'd have a machine doing it and whatever. But, you know, that is the devaluing of the job, which is very sad to see. Now, I listen to a lot of radio and watch TV news and that sort of thing, and it's all very depressing. It's all very depressing, including us. And basically, for a bit of relaxation, I go to Radio 2. The reason I go to Radio 2 is there's no ads on it as well. So you go to those other commercial stations and they just bombard you with adverts, which is very, very irritating. And I used to work for Magic FM, and all I used to have to say was, "This is Eamonn Holmes on Magic FM."
Very soothing,
and then nothing would happen for 10 minutes, and then I would go, "We'll be back right after this break." It was the most boring job I'd ever done. It was ghastly. I resigned from it. I walked away from it. But anyway, they shouldn't even have a voice. They should just have music in there. But Radio 2, DJ Ken Bruce, the legend that is, has warned that Radio 2 needs to stop trying to be cool. And I have a strong view in this because I listen to a lot of it. And to be on Radio 2, you've got to be at least camp, right? So if you're not exactly gay, you've got to be, "Oh, yes, Hilda's phoned in from Wigan. How you love, it's all good." So you've got to be a bit like this, or you've got to tell awful stories. You've got to sit and talk about something that's happened to you that day or whatever it is. Finally play some music. And then when they do, there's the old classics, as you like, something from the 70s or 80s or whatever. But then they'll always introduce something from the 90s or the noughties or whatever to try and bring everything up. So that's their balancing act. Do any of you listen to it?
No, I don't listen to the radio anymore. I mean, I have my headphones in, I've got my streaming services. I'm 33, by the way, so I know I'm a younger audience. I know a lot of people still listen to Radio 2. But I kind of agree. I mean, it's got its audience, and what they're trying to do is bring new people in, bring a younger generation and stop it from dying. But, you know, at the end of the day, you might end up actually losing people, and younger people don't listen to the radio.
But Ken Bruce, I mean, he won almost as many Trick Awards as we did last week. You know, he's incredibly popular. They should listen to what he's saying because he obviously knew what he was doing.
They should listen to what the people are saying, the people who are listening to him and voting for him.
And his new show on Greatest Hits Radio has millions, almost 4 million listeners. I mean, remember what happened to Steve Wright, which was such a travesty, and a complete travesty, that he was essentially unceremoniously kicked out after being one of the most successful radio presenters ever. It's been a real failure for the BBC because the numbers haven't proved their point of trying to make a younger audience. You're a bit of a glass half full, Alex. I'm 33, and I was going to say, well, I'm getting on now. I don't feel young anymore. And you know, the sort of Gen Zers, they don't even really listen to Radio 1 or 1 Extra. It's a different it's a different listening pattern. And so that, you know, you do feel a bit like saying, well, come on, what about the oldies? I mean, if you've got nothing, BBC, your loyal supporters and listeners are all in the 30-plus bracket, so don't give up on us.
But the other thing they do is you get to late night on Radio 2 and they just play stuff that you've never heard of, don't want to hear. I don't know how you would describe the music, but basically, if it gets after 7 o'clock at night on on Radio 2, you just flick somewhere else.
But I've got to that point that I don't enjoy new music anymore. I was having this conversation with my friends at work the other day, and I said, "When was the last time that you actually listened to a new song that you liked?" And they're like, "Oh, that was like at least 2 years ago." And I was like, "Oh my God,
I
it's
did
happened."
this thing when Glastonbury was on. I was like, "Oh, Dua Lipa, I think I know who she is," and Googling and realising what a huge star she was, realising, OK, I need to get back in my box. Anyway,
OK, guys, we'll be playing you again in about 45 minutes' time. Thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get the weather update.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us, expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, that may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here. But the heaviest rain further north in this band, and as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for one or two showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are some cancelled ScotRail train services again this morning because of a shortage of staff. The Mersey ferry is suspended because of a technical problem, and there are some cancelled trains between Northampton and Birmingham after something got caught in the overhead wires. The M40 in Oxfordshire is blocked southbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 11 and 10 from Banbury to Brackley. There are queues in both directions. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. Also in Kent, the A251 is closed in both directions near to Badlesmere Lees along the stretch between Ashford and Faversham, and on the M4 in Cardiff there's a lane closed after an accident eastbound between junctions 32 and 30 from the Corriton interchange to Cardiff Gate, and it's looking slow to Wharton Pass there. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good morning. The new Prime Minister has warned he can either raise defence spending or gamble with Britain's future.
With just one day to go, Keir Starmer's first NATO meeting will happen, and the threat of a global conflict is looming large.
All eyes are on Wednesday's NATO summit as army chiefs call on the Prime Minister to commit to giving 3% of GDP to defence. But where exactly would that money come from?
NATO braces to decide Ukraine's future as Kyiv mourns the deaths of dozens killed in Russia's most aggressive attack for almost 2 years.
Lord David Cameron has quit frontline politics as Sunak's shadow cabinet is announced just in time for the Commons to resume today.
And live here from my sports lounge, as he goes for his 8th Wimbledon title, Novak Djokovic thinks everybody's booing him, whereas really they're probably not. The referee in the England-Holland semi-final for Euro 24 tomorrow has been done for match fixing in the past, and tonight, Spain versus France.
And to talk about today, some of it heavy. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place for tonight and tomorrow across parts of northern Scotland. But it will be raining everywhere all day today. Join me later for all the details.
Hello there, very good morning to you. 1 minute past the hour of 7. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast. So, ahead of the 75th NATO summit in Washington tomorrow, the military alliance is facing its biggest challenge yet.
Army chiefs are urging Keir Starmer to increase defence spending to a minimum of 3% or risk Britain's safety.
Well, that's as the threat of Russia remains more prominent than ever after a children's hospital in Kyiv was hit by a major airstrike yesterday, killing dozens and sending a stark warning ahead of tomorrow's summit.
Deputy editor for The Spectator, Freddie Gray, and defence editor for the Evening Standard, Robert Fox, joins us now. Robert, would you read this as any change in approach from Russia or not?
I think they're on a bit of a roll. They are having success with their missiles. The air-launched, quite simple missiles from aircraft still over Russian territory, the so-called glide bombs. But there are these new hypersonic, they go many times the speed of sound, missiles called the Kinzhal. Too many are getting through, and that's what Putin knows. The other thing that must be said, though, is that the butcher's bill is horrific for Russian forces on the front line. They're still losing more this summer, in this summer campaign, than they can replace. And one doesn't know where this goes. Yes.
So then they would have to change. If they're losing men, they'd have to use machinery then.
That's right. And it's not quite clear that they can do that. I think if you want me to prognosticate, guess, I think Putin's going for a very dirty ceasefire, probably in the early autumn. That is from late August to September. But it will not even be the beginning of the end. It won't even be the end of the beginning, because he will go on. That's part of the problem with NATO. But the thing is, that hasn't been in your headlines, I'm afraid to say, is that they're now facing a 3 to 4 front war over Gaza. There's problems in the West Bank. There is now thought to be near probability that there's going to be serious fighting in South Lebanon, as well as the Houthis. Now, that would bring, if South Lebanon kicks off, threatened by Hezbollah and Iran, and they've said Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri is a target.
Well, Freddie, certainly this attack on Kyiv yesterday, focusing the mind, and the timing of this just a couple of days into a brand new administration here in the United Kingdom. General Sir Patrick Sanders, former head of the British Army, I actually spoke to him at the D-Day commemorations in Portsmouth a couple of weeks ago, and he was already making these noises, to be frank. He was saying that we're just not in a good position. But this lends real strength to his argument that we need to up spending. But can we afford to?
Well, I mean, a lot of people say we just don't have the money. But at the same time, there are other countries with much smaller budgets who would be able to, would be willing to contribute to just up their military's budget, and you just find the cuts elsewhere.
But you don't want to end up like North Korea, where all you spend your money on is defence, and you have people who are in a terribly poor situation. But I'm sort of being silly, but also at the same point, there's a serious point. There are people struggling, cost of living crisis, taxes to the hilt, and our public service is crumbling. How are you going to tell the man on the street, sorry, guys, we just need more of your cash?
Well, Robert's your expert on this, but I mean, efficiencies within defence in Britain, I think, could go a long way.
They should stop using the word defence. They should talk about your security. And once you say that, and if you're going to go on holiday in Ibiza, you might be under threat. I heard yesterday of an Airbus aircraft 2,000 miles away, 2,000 kilometres away, let's be fair, from the battlefront in Ukraine. Its instruments completely done by the Russian jamming, that it is coming home. Security is food, is energy. We only have about 10 days' worth of food in the country at any one time. And, of course, shipping, which is a vital interest for Britain. Actually, we're still up there as a very big power. It is vital to our economy. This is under threat. It's not a bang-on, optional, bolt-on nuisance, which is the way the Treasury, I'm looking at Freddie, has treated defence so much till now. You've got to change the priority.
They've got to change their mindset on that. We've got to change our mindset on it as well. You talk about that Airbus. Was it over Ukraine? Was it? It was miles from Ukraine. Was it more?
It was over France or probably northern Italy or something like that, just on a trial from Airbus.
Why would the Russians want to or need to jam its communications? No,
they weren't doing it deliberately. It would be indiscriminate. But that's what's happening with the Electoral. Finnair, the civil airline, had its GPS completely turned upside down by the Russians the other day. This is the sort of thing we're going to hear a lot more. And we talk about the malware and ransom, which has caused the ransomware that's caused such damage in the health services in this country. Now, that is Russian criminality abetted, given an nod and a wink by the Kremlin. And that is what security is about.
Also, the politics at the moment, in terms of statesmanship, is pretty fascinating. Because Keir Starmer, he has no real experience in foreign policy. He needs to prove to the world that he is a global statesman. This is a good opportunity for him to do it. And he's actually in a surprisingly strong position compared to other Western leaders. Obviously, Joe Biden, we all know what's going on there. Macron, in terrible trouble in France. Starmer, almost by accident, even with a smaller vote share and so on, has this huge, strong majority now. He's got a very small window of time to show to the world that Britain is a kind of big player on the world stage. This is why you're getting this pressure on spending.
But, Freddie, would there be any sort of will or appetite for him to go to the British public and say, I'm going to spend more on defence, will you be paying for it?
I think perhaps yes. I think the British public actually respond quite positively. They responded positively to Rishi Sunak saying 2.5. I think, yes, I think people are aware of how dangerous the world is, and there is an appetite for it. Of course, there isn't an appetite for it when you say this is going to mean we're going to have to cut elsewhere. But yes, I'd say it's a fairly popular cause.
I think we will avoid saying that he's going to cut, but I think that he can really sell the package. If he doesn't say, review, we'll do this, and this is where I fault Sir Patrick Sanders, whom I know quite well. Actually, they're going to have a big defence review. Forget about it. They want a very tight 4 or 5 point reform programme for defence. If they can do that, if they say we're going to build up, we're going to involve the communities, we're going to give you a community offer through reserves and so on, I think they can sell it.
So what do we need, Robert? We don't need tanks, I presume.
we'll have a few tanks, but you're absolutely right. We don't want a hell of a lot of heavy metal. Absolutely right. Numbers are low. You build them up to a certain point, but only a certain point. And that's what I fear about the Patrick Sanders argument. He wants a big army again. That's gone. We're an expeditionary force that works with allies, in and among allies. And that's so important. We've talked about, we work with France, but the people who are really important for us today are the Nordics. We are the leader of a 10-power alliance within NATO called the Joint Expeditionary Force. There we can build up. But the other thing is, we were saying how prominent Keir Starmer will be, and he will be. And who will the other one be from Europe? Who's absolutely solid, from a medium power, a little bit smaller in terms of economy.
You're going to say Russia, aren't you?
Italy. It's Meloni. And it's very, very strange. By the way, just very quick fun factoid. They've got two members of the NATO club, Erdogan and Orban, who've just been dining at the table of Vladimir Putin, and they had the red carpet in the case of Orban.
Yeah, so they're the Turkish
Moscow.
and the Hungary
it's going to be really difficult.
Focusing on another leader, Freddie, and picking into your American expertise, lots of focus will also be on, because this is in Washington, and also everything that's going on with President Biden, lots of focus on his mental capacity. He's come out fighting, hasn't he, writing this letter to his critics saying, absolutely, go for it, run against me if you want to. Where do you see this going? You know, is he going to make it to the ballot paper in November? Should he make it to the ballot paper? And what are the obstacles between removing him and you know?
I think it's not unrealistic to say he won't make it.
Right.
You know, the grimmest of all endings might happen before the end of the year. I know that's grim to say, but he's in very swift decline. It's very obvious to everyone. He is adamantly in denial. Jill Biden is absolutely behind him. You know, he always used to say she's not interested in politics. She's proved in the last few weeks that she is quite interested in politics and certainly into holding on to power. One Democrat I spoke to about this said to me, he said, the question you always have to answer is who gives up Air Force One? And the answer is nobody. And it's true, because once you have that kind of power, it's very hard to step aside. And the Democrats who want Biden to stand down are now trying to urge him to see himself as a latter-day George Washington, you know, somebody who will stand aside for the greater national good. He's not buying that.
But he had such an opportunity to say, I defeated Trump.
Well, imagine how effective it could be if he was at the Democratic National Convention endorsing someone else and saying, my time is done.
Someone else be Michelle Obama? We've had it suggested on the programme today that she's a ready-made replacement.
I think it's a bit of a fantasy, that. I mean, it is possible that the Democrats will find themselves in such a desperate situation that Barack Obama manages to persuade his wife to do it, but she has shown no inclination of doing it. Isabel, you're a big fan of her writing.
Well, I've read her books, and, you know, I've read lots of those.
She never said, sorry, a big fan of writing is probably pushing it.
not just her.
You write books.
I read books, yeah.
But she's always said she finds, you know, she doesn't like politics. She likes Netflix deals, things like that. That's what she likes.
What about Gavin Newsom? He's the Californian Democratic...
A lot of baggage.
A lot of baggage.
Affairs.
But also, was his
California,
ex,
you know,
or is his what...
Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Right, this is a connection to Trump.
Yes.
Talk us through this.
Well, so as one Democrat put it to me, I will never support anyone that slept with Kimberly.
OK.
Is this too early in the morning?
Possibly 7:12. That's fine.
But yes, he is. I mean, he's telegenic. He's slick. He's pretty good at debating and things. But he's been a pretty disastrous governor of California. And can you impose a Californian on the rest of America at the moment when the kind of general mood of the country, the Midwest and so on, is quite anti-California? You've seen a lot of brain drain, money drain coming out of California down to the south of the US. I'm not sure he's a great...
So who then? You're shooting down all the options.
They're all bad. They're all bad. This is another reason why Biden's in a good position, because Pelosi and Schumer, they're very willing to turn on Biden. They're ruthless people. The people who sort of run the party anyways. But they can't see another good option.
Well,
gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. 13 minutes past the hour of 7 on this Tuesday morning. Other stories that you're waking up to. Later today, brand new Health Secretary Wes Streeting will meet with junior doctors to begin talks to end their 20-month dispute over pay and conditions. Junior doctors have been in gridlock with the government as they push for a 35% pay rise. They say would restore their pay to levels of 2008.
A day on from the shock French election result, which saw Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally underperform, the left-wing coalition, which secured the most votes, has revealed its policies, including a 90% tax for the rich and reducing the retirement age from 64 to 60.
And smoking-related deaths have reached a record high, despite fewer people taking up the habit. Cases of liver, throat and kidney cancer have more than doubled over the past 20 years. Charities are urging the new government to push ahead with plans that would see anyone born from 2009 essentially banned from buying cigarettes in their lifetime.
Now, I don't know what's going on with the weather. It certainly doesn't feel like July. I had a woolly jumper on yesterday, and every time I stepped outside, I needed a brolly. And I think it's going to be more of the same today, unfortunately. Alex Deakin's our man with all the details.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us, expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, it may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here. But the heaviest rain further north in this band, and as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south, we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for one or two showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Great British Giveaway. There's nothing greater than us giving that away and hopefully ending up in your bank account. How much is it?
£30,000, and you don't have to pay any tax on that either. So here's how it could be yours.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck with all of that, and we were wishing good luck and much more to our colleague Catherine Foster over the past few days as she lived out a mother's worst nightmare.
Yes, her sons were lost in Bali for more than 30 hours. She said that the general election day last Thursday, which was supposed to be the pinnacle of all the campaigning that she'd covered for weeks, was the worst day of her life. Find out what happened.
Yeah, we've got Catherine and the boys happily found, very found, and they're going to be here in the studio next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have said Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Now, we've got a story and a half to tell you and bring you now. Our very own GB News political correspondent, who we love very much, Catherine Foster, joins us in the studio, and she's smiling, but she wasn't smiling for the past few days.
Yes, she was expected to be bringing us the election results, as she always is, regularly on our programme on this big day, but found herself instead in a mother's worst nightmare after 2 of her sons, Matthew and Andrew, were reported missing in Bali.
Well, Catherine endured, as she puts it, the worst day of her life before finally, after 40 hours of no sightings, hallelujah, the boys were found. And they were found, and Mummy's brought them into the studio this morning. Stupid. What the hell? What? Whose idea was it to go up a mountain, up a volcano? Whose idea was that?
Unfortunately, it was my idea.
And when did you realise this is not such a good idea?
Oh, quite early on. I think it was like maybe 2 hours in. We were like, should we turn back now?
Yeah.
And we decided to go up, and that was our last mistake, because then we went up the rest of the mountain, phones died, and got lost up there.
So this is a volcano in Bali, and instead of speaking to locals and taking the advice, which would have been hire a guide, make sure you've got expert advice getting up this mountain. You decided to use technology, which lots of people do, and use an app on your phone to help you navigate it. But what went wrong, Andrew?
I think it was just a complete lack of preparation, you know. Just went out there, no power banks, like, we were just completely unprepared and we hadn't done the research.
So your phone ran out of battery and you just didn't know the way down, literally that simple.
Once we were at the top, we were expecting to see, like, tour groups and stuff that we could...
But nobody about?
No one,
Why was that? Do you know?
The top of the volcano it was 3,000 metres up, so it was in the clouds.
Yeah.
And the terrain was so sheer, there was no way for us to go around the top to where the tour groups would have been.
Gotcha.
So when we got there, we were just like, well, the risk of trying to go around is much too high.
Well, meanwhile, Catherine was working away. It was voting day on Thursday, and we're not allowed to cover any politics on Thursday, so it was a bit of a lull day for you. And that's when you started to get the bad news.
I woke up at 6 o'clock and they'd arranged a proxy vote from Bali, and I thought, I better check how they want me to vote. So I tried to ring them at 6 o'clock. He didn't pick up. Tried to ring Andrew. He didn't pick up. Thought, they'll get back within a few minutes. They were amazing at keeping in touch. And they didn't. And after about 15 minutes, I thought, I'll go see where they are. I tracked on Find My Phone. And Matthew's last location was 2 days ago at the top of a volcano. And I was a bit worried then, but I thought, oh, it's a glitch, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I got a text from a friend saying, can you give us a call? A bit worried about them. Then spoke to a girl they'd befriended who was in Sweden, but they'd met on their travels. And she told me that they'd gone up the mountain. By the time I found out, they'd been missing for 30 hours. They'd gone up the mountain on the Tuesday night, British time. This was the Thursday morning, without a guide. And they'd told her it was really hard. And she told them to turn back, but they hadn't. And they'd sent screenshots from this app with this trail that they were following on the app, screenshots of the app in case there was a problem, and a Snapchat of a Matthew avatar at the top. And she said, I know they made it to the top because I could see that his phone had nearly died. But the trail had actually closed many years ago. So the app, we'll need to make sure that that gets taken off the app. But, you know, technology saved them in the end because it was the screenshots and it was the messages that they'd sent. But they should never have been without a guide.
And Catherine, for context, you've got 3 children.
Yeah.
You sadly lost your husband just a few years ago, 2021, and there you were, fearing for the lives of your boys. What was running through your mind?
Yeah, I have a 15-year-old and my 90-year-old dad was down staying. He'd been looking after the 15-year-old while I'd been on the election campaign, but my husband had died of a heart attack very suddenly, shortly after I started working here in 2021. So I've literally got the 3 of them. And before they'd gone away, I'd said to them, you know, please be careful. I can't take any more trauma. And on the Monday, I'd spoken to them and I couldn't talk to them for long because I was with the Prime Minister it was a gin tasting, the then Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, on a visit to a gin distillery. I was about to go and taste gin. And I was like, I can't talk to you for long. And they'd mentioned a hike in passing, but I didn't know the details. And I said to them, look, don't go off on your own. You know, people get lost. Jay Slater, Michael Mosley, go in a group. And Matthew's exact words to me were, Mum, we're not stupid. And that was almost the last thing that he...
Thank goodness you weren't stupid. But what were you doing during those 30 hours that Mum couldn't, when the phone died and Mum couldn't get in touch? Where were you? What were you up to?
Well, we were trying to figure out the best course of action, because trying to find the path without our phones, it was straight through the middle of the jungle. And when you're in the jungle, everything...
looks the same, yeah.
But it started to pour with rain, and we were on these rocks, and we sat under a tree, and the amount of rain created a river, like a stream.
Yeah.
We were like, we grew up with our dad watching like Bear Grylls videos. We were like, let's follow the stream down the hill, and then the sun set, and we just had to like sleep in the bushes in the jungle.
And what were you boys thinking at that point? You probably were worried that your mum would be worried. Yeah. Were you worried for yourselves?
Yeah. I'd say the first night, very worried. But once we'd gotten down to the bit where we made a a little base. We were more so, I'd say, worried about everyone at home not knowing that we're, you know, somewhere relatively safe and calling for help, and yeah.
But you'd no food, you'd no water, you'd...
Yeah.
I mean, and you had to sleep outdoors that first night. You just down tools and you sit it out until the sun comes up again.
Yeah.
But you had an idea that you could be down that hill in a certain amount of hours or so?
Yeah, we thought when we started following the river down, we thought that, right, well, it will eventually lead to civilization. But the next morning when we woke up, we followed it down and it led to a big waterfall that dried with about a 10-metre drop. So we weren't actually able to follow it any further down.
Gosh.
And did you have those moments as brothers where you sort of embraced each other and were grateful that you had each other? And what did you say to each other?
Well, on the way up, I snapped at Andrew because he was just listing off everything that could go wrong. And as the elder brother, as the one that ultimately was in charge, I was like, I don't need to hear this right now. We just need to get down. But then at the end, I remember, I was like, out of it, obviously the last person I'd want to be lost with is my brother, because but it's also he is the person that I knew would be best in the situation.
Yeah. So when did it all come to an end? How did it all come to an end? What did you see?
We'd just been shouting all day, help, 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 help us. And
you'd made an SOS as well.
Yeah, made an SOS. And we hear from the forest these like noises, and we're shouting help, help, and then they make themselves known, and we go further down and we see their flashlights.
This was the search party?
Yeah.
And they were expecting to find you dead?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were.
And what state were you in?
We were tired, but we weren't, like, we'd collected rainwater, so we'd had stuff to drink. We hadn't eaten, so we were extremely exhausted. But when they found us, they were like, you boys are very, very... And they were looking for a word, and I was like, stupid. And they were like, yes, extremely stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Catherine, and have you got over the sorrow and turned it into anger? I mean, how do you feel today about it all?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm ecstatic, but I'm just... I was beyond furious. Beyond furious. I was making all sorts of threats if they weren't dead, that I was going to kill them
yourself.
You know, they were so lucky, and the reason we've done this, we did think about it, because obviously they were very silly and they're going to get abused for that. But the reason we've done it is because we want other people to learn from this. You know, they were so lucky, and I just want, hopefully, other families with kids travelling to look at this and know that they made it out, but they very nearly didn't. And Matthew fell down a load of rocks, and, you know, could have, like, a lot of rocks. And if one of them had got injured or whatever, but also we just want to say thank you to the people that rescued them. Thank you to this girl, Sarah, that had raised the alarm. She'd reported them missing the night before I even knew, and all our friends who, the day that I found out, they dropped their jobs, they came round to my house. We galvanised an army, and all of their young friends got missing, notifications going out on social groups that right through Bali, and, you know, so everybody saved them, and we just want to say thank you, but also please learn from this.
Just on a final note, Bear Grylls has commented on this, hasn't he? He's heard about what happened. What's he said?
Oh, I can't remember exactly. I think he put something like, well done, boys, and he, like, left the strong arm emoji on his tweet, but that was... Yeah, it was quite surreal to see that, considering growing up watching him.
Thank goodness Sir Bear and his videos and you knowing what you knew. And good seeing you, lads. Very good seeing you.
I want to give you a hug, Catherine. Come here.
We want you to know how much we love your mum and how vital she is to the work that
Don't do it again.
We do here. Yeah.
We'll never do anything like that.
I believe you.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Because she loves you so much.
We love her so much.
Oh,
Matthew and Andrew,
Catherine.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Catherine. Fine boys.
Lovely
Despite
boys.
what you think, wanting to kill them, they're very nice.
You've done a very good job.
Good.
Here we go.
Right, we're going to take a break there, and coming up, we're going to have the sport with Paul. See you right after this. Don't go away.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. There are a number of cancelled ScotRail train services again today because of a shortage of staff. The Mersey ferry suspended because of a technical problem. The M56 in Cheshire's blocked eastbound by an accident between junctions 7 and 6 from Bowden to Hale, causing queues. A number of cancelled trains between Northampton and Birmingham because someone got caught in the overhead wires. The M40 in Oxfordshire is blocked southbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 11 and 10 from Banbury to Brackley. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues approaching the M25 because of roadworks. Also in Kent, the A251 is closed at Battlesmere Lees between Faversham and Ashford after an accident. And on the M4 in Cardiff, the inside lane's closed eastbound by an accident in junctions 32 and 30 from the Corriton interchange to Cardiff Gate, causing queues. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel. I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Right, here's Paul, and here he is serving you up the sport. And let's begin with Wimbledon.
Shall we? Novak Djokovic. Oh, dear. I don't know how the crowds feel about Novak Djokovic. He beat Holger Rune yesterday in 3 sets. And Holger Rune loved. You said he's loved, isn't he?
He's very popular,
everybody loves Holger Rune. And the thing is, he was beaten, but the crowds were cheering for Rune, but it sounds like a boo. So, quite frankly, you get the Rune. So that's what the crowd was shouting.
Yeah.
And Novak Djokovic took it the wrong way. He assumed that they were actually booing him when they were actually calling. I mean, they do it at Bruce Springsteen concerts. People, you've never been to see the boss before. There's Bruce. And it's like, what were you booing for?
But Djokovic says he knows all the tricks, and he still thinks that despite your apology and explanation for that they were booing him.
Well, he said, I know they were cheering for Rune, but that's an excuse to boo me, is what he said. I mean, come on, Novak. I've been on the tour for more than 20 years. I know all the tricks. So I think he thinks that as a Wimbledon crowd, what we do is we all sit together and go, OK, let's do that trick and see if he notices that one. They're just shouting for Rune, and they want him to win, and Novak's a little upset the fact that they did. And that's the long and short.
Should England fans be booing the referee on Wednesday night for the Dutch game. Felix Zewer.
Felix Zewer accepted a €300 bribe from a fellow referee in 2005. And Jude Bellingham, he was the referee for a game when Jude Bellingham was playing at Dortmund against Bayern Munich. December 2021, a lot of decisions went against them. And Jude then said, if you give a referee that has match fixed before the biggest game in Germany, what do you expect? So obviously everybody knows about this. And Bellingham was then fined 40,000 euros it was.
But now Bellamy's probably going to be playing on Wednesday night.
Yeah, he will be.
And this guy will be refereeing.
So it will have no effect whatsoever, because the thing is, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If the referee then is a little overzealous with him, people will say, oh, that's the reason. And then if he's not, it could be, oh, well, he's probably proving that there's no bad blood. You know what? This is something that's happened. It will not affect. Oh, I hope.
Spain against France today. Who do you see as the winners there?
I think Spain will win. France cannot score in open play. They haven't done in the Euros so far. They've scored 2 penalties. They've gone to penalties, and their top scorer is own goal. That's their top scorer in France, which is unbelievable. Didier Deschamps was accused of the team being boring, and he said to the journalist, just quite frankly, if you don't like it, then just do not watch us.
And what's Mbappe's nose like?
It's, well, my dog's got no nose.
What?
Oh, I must have done this 3 times.
What?
How does it smell? Terrible. My dog's got no nose.
How does it smell?
Terrible.
Ah, bum.
Has your dog got no nose?
Yeah, it's got a little machine.
Right.
And Mbappe's got no nose. It smells fabulous.
OK, what do the birthdays smell like today?
OK, right, let's try this one. Here's the first one. OK, who we got? Who could it possibly be? Our first birthday. The tension. There we are. Who's that? It's
I can't see from this.
It's Ashley Young. Ashley Young.
Is it?
Yeah, Ashley Young. There he's
How many years young?
How old? Yeah, how many years young?
I would say Ashley Young.
Probably Ashley old these days.
Yeah, I would say, gosh, he could be 40, but he was playing last year, wasn't he? So
playing a lot. And he's one of the older statesmen.
I'll go 39.
39 for Isabel.
I think 39. Yeah.
You're both going to agree on 39, and you are both correct. Very good. Let's go with another one then. We've got a couple more. We've got look at that. The legend, the Italian Paolo Di Canio. How old is Paolo? He was very famed when he was playing for Sheffield Wednesday, pushing the referee over. Got a ban for that.
West Ham.
That's him.
He scored. He put United out of the FA Cup, so he did as well. Di Canio, I think he's a bit older. I think he's about 43 or so.
43 for Di Canio. What do you think, Izzy?
Yeah, same, but I'll go 41 just to be different.
It's 56.
Stop.
56.
Oh, right.
Well,
I'm well out.
Yeah, apparently 56. 56. Gosh. Don't be fooled by the picture, because that's them in their.
No, you're right. You're fooled by the picture.
I've got one especially for you.
OK.
One especially for you. I know you will love him. Who's that?
I can't see. Our way. Is it Stevie Coppell?
Steve Coppell.
Right, OK. Stevie Coppell would...
Later manager, Manchester United.
I'd say Stevie Coppell would be great right winger. So I'd say he's 70.
70. Isabel?
66.
You can go 1 year either way. Are you going to go higher or are you going to lower?
71.
If I don't get a game show out of this...
71.
69.
Stop
69. Steve Coppell, happy birthday, Steve.
Well done, Stevie. Happy birthday. That was a great team. Tommy Docherty's team. Stuart Pearson, Stevie Coppell in there.
Stuart Pearson used to do this, didn't he? That was his goal.
Like the Andy Murray.
Yeah, Andy Murray and Steve, it would be like that. But yeah, 77, the FA Cup winning side.
Yeah.
Happy days. Happy days.
Good. Thank you very much, Paul.
I have to say, loads of views coming in reaction to that interview with Catherine. Kevin H., who's a GB News member, saying, I must confess to having had a weep along with Catherine there. What a story. Glad the ending was a happy one. 6 likes on that one. And AM saying, my heart goes out to Catherine. How awful for her. Don't let the boys off the hook too easily, though. They're old enough to have known better. So glad they're found and home back safely with you. And lots of people echoing those sentiments this morning. We do as well.
Good. We're going to go through the papers next. Ella Whelan and Alex Armstrong right after this.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday,
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something, you know. He's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, new girl Pearl, and he wants to impress us, who enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I just felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved, and there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Going through the papers now, we say hello, good morning to Ella Whelan and Alex Armstrong. Very nice to see you both. And Alex, you want to concentrate on the French election results.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a shock result the other day with the far left winning, not the far right, which I think surprised everybody because the Marine Le Pen's party were predicted to win a majority in the French Parliament. But what happened, just so the audience understand, is that the left group of political groupings in France decided to drop hundreds of candidates so they could form a bloc. That has stopped Le Pen getting a majority, and in a shock result, she came third. But what followed this big win for the far left was mass amounts of fighting on the streets, rioting, and calling for Macron to immediately step down. Now, I think this is a bit rich. If you win an election, surely you should just be there to celebrate. And I think for the French people, it's a rather difficult pill to swallow. Marine Le Pen won 37% of the vote share. She actually was the most popular party in that election, and the far left got 24%, along with Macron's party. And to then go out on the streets and call for him to resign and start rioting and looting, I think is a really, really poor show. And let's not forget that in a few weeks' time, we've got the Olympics coming up in Paris, and this is going to set off a mass amounts of political turmoil. we're now going to have a hung parliament in France, the first time since 1945, and during that period of time, there were 21 governments in 12 years. So the political instability that's going to follow this is going to be shocking for Paris.
It's also really fascinating hearing some of the proposals from Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who's described as like the Jeremy Corbyn of France, and he wants to not only reduce the retirement age from 64 to 60, which we know that's been a huge headache for Macron's personally, is trying to change the retirement age, but also taxing the rich to the hilt.
90%.
Well, I think a lot of the policy announcements, particularly from Mélenchon or from some of the smaller, the Communist Party that's part of that bloc, were made at times when they never imagined they'd be anywhere near power. And I think the important thing to note is that the New Popular Front, this coalition, number one, is made up of 4 parties which, in classic lefty style, really hate each other, actually, and the divisions run even deeper than they do between them and Macron. But also it's an entirely negative vote. This was all about trying to stop Le Pen, and that is not a good basis to try and form any kind of government policy platform. I mean, you've got this bizarre situation in France now where the sort of working-class populist vote, if you like, is mostly tied up in National Rally with Le Pen. Yeah. For good or for ill, I think probably for ill.
OK.
This New Popular Front is really a party of sort of the bourgeois urbanists, and that's a big problem.
Let's go back to British politics. A row. Annalise Dodds has been appointed as Women's Inequalities Minister. Why is that creating a problem, Ella?
Because it's a real slap in the face for anybody who's had even the slightest bit of interest in the gender wars. Annalise Dodds, if you don't remember, is somebody who, when asked on Women's Hour, I know we can be cheap about this, but when she was asked on Women's Hour, what is a woman, she said, well, it's kind of contextual.
Well, I've got the specific quote, different definitions legally around what a woman actually is, and when she was pressed on it, she said, I do think it depends what the context is.
What if you're sitting in a chair or if you're standing up, or... I mean, obviously, I know what she's alluding to. It's the idea of trans women or women and all the rest of it. But it was a real coward's line. She wouldn't come out and actually say that she's against the gender-critical view. And the interesting thing is that, you have Bridget Phillipson put in as the Education Secretary. She is the one who has the role of Women's Inequalities Minister because that's how it functions. But Starmer puts Dodds in as a deputy, which has to be a political signal to send a message to those trans activists who are on the more extreme end of wanting gender changes and self-ID and all the rest of it, of saying, I hear you, I'm still with you. And that's a very depressing fact, because the more information and evidence we get out about what happens, particularly in relation to young people with this trans issue, the governments need to take a strong stance on it.
Bridget Phillipson herself refused to answer the question 8 times during the election campaign about whether or not men who still have penises but are legally viewed as women would be allowed into women's own spaces. She just refused to answer the question. So, she herself has questions to answer to be responsible for women's equality. Well, you can kind of see J.K. Rowling and I believe Martina Navratilova's outcry at all of those. Other feminists have been really offended.
Yeah, I couldn't believe in one of those debates where Keir Starmer said, I used to think this whole thing I was confused about cervixes, but then Tony Blair told me that, women have vaginas, sorry, using this language that's early morning, women have vaginas and men have penises, and it all became clear to me, and you think, OK, number one, we weren't clear on the difference between cervix and vagina. Number two, it took a bloke to tell you. Exactly. I mean...
A Prime Minister which they're digging up from over a decade ago. It's ridiculous, isn't it? It really is. And I think it's a slap in the face to women, generally, to have a woman Inequalities Minister who can't define what a woman is. Yeah. And it really is. I mean, J.K. Rowling obviously has come out pretty strong on this.
So, Ella, just define for us what a woman is, because I know a lot of people will be listening to this and be totally confused, and I, as an interviewer, would sit here thinking, I don't really want to talk about this because I'm bound to get this wrong. You're bound to offend somebody. So you're saying a woman is what?
A woman. I mean, I really think that the vast majority of people out there know what a woman and a man is, but it's based on biological reality. Again, it's too early to go into all of the gory details.
But biological reality is a good description.
It's what's in. It's what your body is.
Woman. No one's saying that you can't have a trans person.
The thing,
for goodness' sake, let women be women.
The thing that annoys me though is that then you get into. It's not like I want to be biologically reductionist about this. Women can be I'm not a woman, I'm Ella Whelan, you know, and so we end up sort of reducing this down to biological reality. But we have to agree on the fact the sky is blue, the grass is green, and there are men and women.
But there's a lot of people who will be disagreeing with you if you put that argument out in public. That's the only thing.
And that's fine, and we can have those debates, but there's a difference between a government implementing policies, for example, changing the school curriculum, all the stuff that Labour is suggesting, and having a debate.
Let's have a debate about greenfield sites. The argument about this in The Guardian is we're going to need a lot of them.
Well, this is the weird thing, and I've spoke about housing a fair amount because I think it's really important. We need to build more. There is a shortage of housing. There's lots of young people can't get into the housing ladder for this reason. But there's so many brownfield sites that have yet to be touched. We're talking about 27,000 hectares of brownfield sites that haven't been developed. So Labour's policy is we need to clear out the green belt to build 1.5 million homes. Well, if they actually tackled the brownfield sites, they'd be able to build 1.2 million homes and not have this massive debate about whether they should chop down British greenery, which I think should be protected to a large extent.
I think speed has a lot to do with it.
Sure, yeah, that's a good point. But some simple changing in the planning laws will really actually get these horrible places that do need this development sorted out much quicker.
Maybe it's because my husband's a tree surgeon, he needs tip sites all the time, but he made the point to me that brownfield sites are really important for cities. I mean, having ugly spaces filled with trash is important for city infrastructure. So I want to slightly defend.
Well, sorry, why? Just so you
because you have to have places, particularly in urban areas, where stuff can get dumped, where stuff is, you know, brownfield sites, tips, tree surgery tips, rubbish tips, all the rest of it. And if you start just tackling all of those for house building, you lose a central part of infrastructure. That's a small petty point.
Are you a YIMBY then? You're all about go for it on my backyard?
I think that I'm 100% a YIMBY, a brutalist YIMBY. But I think the thing that excited me about Labour's plans was the idea that you wouldn't just tack on some houses to already overcrowded areas, but that you would have this really ambitious town building project of saying, yeah, we're going to have new Milton Keynes, and we're going to do the transport infrastructure, the schools, the GPs, all the rest of it. Think big around housing.
Think of flying over the whole country in an airplane. There's a lot of green out there. Alex and Ella, thank you. See you later. Here's Alex with the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us, expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, it may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here. But the heaviest rain further north in this band, and as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for one or two showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Perth and Kinross, the A85 is partly blocked by an accident between Comrie and Crieff. On the M56 in Cheshire, the outside lane's closed eastbound from junction 7 at Bowden to 6 at Hale after an accident causing delays. On the M40 in Oxfordshire, there's a lane closed southbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 11 and 10 from Banbury to Brackley. There are long delays towards there, not helped by a breakdown. In London, on the North Circular, there's a lane closed where someone's broken down on the southbound exit to the A12 at Redbridge with queues from the M11. And in Surrey, a lorry spilt oil on quite a stretch of the A24 where the road is closed northbound from Reigate Road Dorking to the Burford Bridge roundabout at Box Hill, and also from the Givens Grove roundabout to the Beaver Brook roundabout at Leatherhead. And on the M25 in Surrey, the Clockwise Slip Road into the Cobham Services is also closed. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Very good to see you. Nice to have you on board. The headlines. The new Prime Minister is warned he can either raise defence spending or gamble with your future.
Well, with just one day to go until Sir Keir Starmer's first NATO meeting, the threat of a global conflict looms large.
All eyes are on Wednesday's NATO summit as army chiefs call on the Prime Minister to commit to giving 3% of GDP to defence. But where exactly will that money come from?
NATO braces to decide Ukraine's future as Kyiv mourns the deaths of dozens killed in Russia's most aggressive attack for almost 2 years.
David Cameron quits frontline politics as Sunak's shadow cabinet is announced just in time for the Commons to resume today.
And in the sport this morning, as he goes for his 8th Wimbledon title, Novak Djokovic thought centre court booed and disrespected him yesterday, as if they would, but I'm not so sure. The first Euro 2024 semi-final is tonight as Spain take on France, and the day before England-Holland, Dutch football legend Rafael van der Vaart will join us.
And to talk about today, some of it heavy. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place for tonight and tomorrow across parts of northern Scotland. But it will be raining everywhere all day today. Join me later for all the details.
Just gone 1 minute past 8. Very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast.
tomorrow in Washington, the 75th NATO summit. The military alliance is facing its biggest challenge yet.
That's as the threat of Russia remains more prominent than ever after a children's hospital in Kyiv was hit by a major airstrike yesterday, killing dozens and sending a stark warning ahead of tomorrow's summit.
Now, in response, Army chiefs are urging Starmer to increase defence spending to 3% to risk Britain's safety, a pressure on the new government that will only increase when the Commons resumes this afternoon.
Well, over the past 6 weeks, Labour has been gearing up for today's parliamentary transition, and our reporter Adam Cherry has this report.
So, you're a new MP elected for the very first time. Congratulations, well done, you made it. You're here in Parliament. What actually happens when you get here? How do you find your way around? How do you even log into your email system? Fear not, we've got some answers for you. Or at least, I've spoken to the people who do. Take a look at this. New MPs are about to stroll into the iconic Palace of Westminster for the very first time. For many of them, this is a dream come true. Of course, starting a new job can be intimidating. Luckily, while Parliament was dissolved, the House administration team has been hard at work to prepare for the new kids on the block.
We have set up something called the New Members Reception Area here in Portcullis House, and at that we equip members with the information and the things that they need to get themselves up and running in their new role as parliamentarians. There will be induction activities, not just this New Members Reception Area. There'll be a chamber briefing when it'll be the first time that members sit in the chamber. They won't have been sworn in at that point, but we want to take them through the courtesies and conventions of that place so that they know a bit about everything from, you know, the enunciator bell sounding, how to ask a question, all of those sorts of things.
New members will enter through Cromwell Green and head to Westminster Hall. There they will check in at reception, receive their welcome pack and get paired with a seasoned buddy.
So that's an experienced member of House staff that will be able to help them navigate this place.
Westminster is a bit of a labyrinth and new MPs often need a helping hand. Fortunately, the palace doorkeepers have got their backs.
One of the things we kind of do as homework is I normally stay up at night and watch some of the election results come in, getting to know some of the new faces, what will come in. We also have a doorkeeper Bible of Book of Faces of members.
They've got to do some learning as well, haven't they? So do they ever get lost? Do you have to help them, show them around? What's that like?
Some of the ones I've done before, to have a very exciting time with lots of new members. And yes, some of them will not have been on this building before, and it can be quite daunting, and they need guidance and help and assistance, and that's what we're all there for. You know, yes, they'll get to know us, but we've got to get to know them quicker. That's what doorkeepers are known for, you know.
So a busy few weeks ahead with a lot to learn. Just don't forget to smile for that class photo. Adam Cherry, GB News, London.
So it's a bit of a funny one, isn't it? It's like first day of term and last day of term for some of those outgoing MPs, of course, for the Conservatives, lots of whom didn't expect to lose their seat. So we've seen all of the mayors heading into Downing Street this morning, and overnight we've had the Shadow Cabinet announced with big resignations from the likes of David Cameron as Shadow Foreign Secretary and, indeed, Richard Holden as party chairman.
It's not a big resignation. Cameron's looked and thought, I'll take the top job. I'm not sitting doing this in the Shadow Cabinet.
Yeah, but that's the big changes of the day. So let's get the reaction this morning to Olivia Utley, who joins us from Westminster, where it's all happening.
It absolutely is all happening here. I've just seen Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, going in to number 10 behind me. Meanwhile, as you say, the new Shadow Cabinet has been appointed. There aren't very many surprises there. Richard Holden has resigned as party chair, as you would expect, after the Conservatives' worst night in electoral history. David Cameron has stepped down as Shadow Foreign Secretary. It would be quite difficult for him as the Shadow Foreign Secretary without a seat in the House of Commons, because he would be expected to respond to the Foreign Secretary. So we have had Andrew Mitchell, who was his deputy in the Commons, replacing him. Otherwise, it's mostly what we would expect there. But eyes aren't really on the Conservatives today. Eyes are on Labour. We're having the first sitting of the House of Commons this afternoon. It's the first time we'll expect to hear from Rishi Sunak since his resignation. MPs will be sworn into the House. Now, ridiculously, because there are just so many many Labour MPs now. They're not all going to fit on the government benches, but they've been told not to spill over into the opposition benches. So expect to see them bagsying their seats, rushing off to get sitting down. I don't think that will be a problem. They seem very, very keen indeed. I was in the House of Commons last night and it was packed to the rafters with Labour MPs absolutely delighted to be there. Meanwhile, of course, Keir Starmer is heading off to NATO, and he's received a bit of a bruising from the outgoing head of the army, General Sir Patrick Saunders. Now, he suggests that Keir Starmer needs to raise defence spending ASAP. During the election campaign, Rishi Sunak promised that if he were made Prime Minister, he would raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Keir Starmer said that he would like to do the same, but wanted to wait until a moment where it was deemed sort of financially possible to do that. General Sir Patrick Saunders suggests that there is no time to wait. So Keir Starmer needs to raise that extra 0.5% of GDP spending. And actually, he says that the new Prime Minister needs to go further. He says that the rise needs to be more like 3%. At the moment, he says that the army is so depleted, stockpiles are so depleted, that Britain could only fight a small war for about a month, which obviously, in the very, very dangerous global scenario that we find ourselves in, isn't really good enough. It'll be really interesting to see how the new Prime Minister reacts to that this morning.
Olivia, whilst you've been standing there, we've been hearing that these mayors have been heading inside Downing Street for their first meeting with Sir Keir Starmer. And in the last few minutes, he's announcing a council for regions and nations. And this is to claw back, as he describes it, Whitehall's control over the big cities and regions. Interesting, one of the first moves from Starmer.
Really interesting. I mean, obviously the Labour Party did incredibly well at the local elections not very long ago. And so each of these regional mayors, with the exception of Ben Houchen, now the only Conservative mayor, has a direct line to number 10. So I think we can expect to see the regional mayors and the Prime Minister working very, very closely together, and possibly some of these regional mayors being given more control, more responsibility. It'll be a very sort of cosy partnership between those mayors and the Prime Minister's office, which isn't really something that we've seen before. Under Rishi Sunak, the regional mayors were a real mix of Conservative and Labour. Well, not really anymore. That line of contact is going to be much more direct and much clearer.
OK, Olivia, thank you very much with that update.
And the time at 8:09, let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom on this Tuesday morning. Later today, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting will meet with junior doctors to begin talks to end the 20-month dispute over pay and conditions. Junior doctors have been in gridlock with the government as they push for a 35% pay rise they say would restore pay back to 2008 levels.
And a day on from the French election result, which saw Marine Le Pen's party, National Rally, underperform. The left-wing coalition, which secured the most votes, has revealed its policies, which include a 90% tax for the rich and reducing the retirement age from 64 to 60.
Smoking-related deaths have reached a record high, despite fewer people taking up the habit. Cases of liver, throat and kidney cancer have more than doubled. Charities are urging the new government to push ahead with plans that would see anyone born from 2009 essentially banned from buying cigarettes.
Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking it's July the 9th, but looking out the window, you could be forgiven thinking it was April. You know, showers constantly,
November.
chilly, needed a woolly jumper yesterday, and it's just bleak, isn't it? And I'd love to be promising you something a bit more uplifting, but I think Alex Deakin has more of the same for you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us, expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, it may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here. But the heaviest rain further north in this band. And as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for one or two showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it mightn't be a great day, but it is the Great British Giveaway. A good day for that any day.
Yes, we have £30,000 in tax-free cash, which could be yours. This is how you could make it so.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Lots of reaction to that interview that we did just around an hour ago with Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, having lost her sons up a mountain in Bali last week.
I mean,
it was an
really
emotional interview, wasn't it?
Very emotional, as it would be. I mean, they were missing for 30 hours. They were stranded in jungle, really it was. And on the side of the mountain that there were no tourists from, and they just kept heading downhill. It was unbelievable, and they were eventually found by a search and rescue team while it was raining, and they were shouting and the search and rescue team were looking, and thankfully they both came together.
We're going to replay clips of that in around an hour's time if you did miss it. But just to reflect some of the thoughts coming in from you, Gillian on Twitter saying it certainly was emotional watching that. Lisa Mills, these boys would never be allowed out of the house again. Catherine made me tear up. And other comments there in relation to Catherine as well. People saying just congratulations on being really brave during that interview after everything that Catherine has been through. And there was a really touching moment where, you know, I said it's just because your mum loves you that she's so upset. And the boy said, we love her too, and you could see they looked really contrite. Very emotional watch.
Catherine
check it out.
Lost her husband a couple of years ago, and she thought she'd lost her two boys as well. It was a very, very emotional interview. We're glad it's turned out well, and as Isabel said, we'll show you that after 9 o'clock again this morning.
Now stay with us, still to come. What now for the Conservative Party? We're talking to one of those who's behind a campaign that was very successful. He might just have the answer.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Royal Academy's annual exhibition has returned for the 256th time to Brighton the summer holidays. It's the world's oldest open submission exhibition. Anyone can enter work to be considered for inclusion. I'm joined now by art critic JJ Charlesworth for his verdict. What is your verdict?
My verdict is you should go and see it. You are confronted with many things of varying quality, selected by artists, and you very much, instead of being given something to you that's supposed to be good, you have to make your own decision.
I went along yesterday, and I personally did see some pictures on the wall that I thought were absolutely stunning. I'm going to mention Peter Ucker, which I think is a remark. And now these are the two by Ben Jonson, Grundtvig 1, and we've got one coming out of Berlin Pool. I think that's an absolutely stunning piece of work. And then Claire Douglas should be up. Here we are, Claire Douglas.
Yes.
Souvenir from the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
That last one, actually, a very witty painting.
A piece like that was really interesting. I think it caught a lot of people's eyes because it had very kind of humorous, slightly bleak take on post-Brexit Britain. It's set in this fictitious world of Brummington, which is a sort of loose satire on Birmingham. I thought it was a bit mean.
I think we had maybe Black Lives Matter. We had Boris Johnson. I think our own Jacob Rees-Mogg made his way into the painting.
Yeah, so there's definitely a slant, a political slant, on the part of the artist. But even that said, I thought it was an interesting and enjoyable work, even though maybe you don't agree with the artist on what they're trying to say. And I think that actually made for an interesting moment because you're seeing that people are disagreeing, right? Both through the artwork and in front of artworks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, all you'll be hearing is how the Conservatives lost the election and by what huge margins and how they were trounced and all that sort of thing. But not everywhere. We're not going to introduce you to this man. Let's speak to Matthew Goodwin Freeman. And Matthew's a bit of a political genius, a political guru here, because he was campaign manager for an MP called Bob Blackman. Bob won the seat, and with over 50% of the vote share going to Bob. So the thing is, Matthew, as we speak to you this morning, amid all this, despair amongst Conservative voters, we've got to ask you, how did you do that, and what lessons have we to learn from you?
Good morning, and that's the question that I've been asking myself all weekend, and thank you for having me on again. We bucked the trend in Harrow East. We increased the majority from 8,000 to 12,000 in a seat where colleagues were losing 20,000 votes. Bob's the only MP now with over 50% of the vote share. And I really think it comes down to three things. One, the candidate. Bob is out in the constituency every single week. He's knocking on doors every weekend and has built a name for himself as the local guy. Secondly, the campaign, and this is where I try not to congratulate myself too much, but we ran a stellar campaign. We had thousands of leaflets going out. We were knocking on every single door. We were speaking to as many constituents as we could, and we had that relentless pace again and again, right from the moment Rishi called the election, right through to polling day. And then lastly, I think it's that connection between Bob and the constituents. We framed the whole election about Bob, and we ran a positive campaign about what he's done and what he would continue to do. And I think that's where the voters in Harrow East rejected the negative campaigning, rejected the national campaign, and focused on whose name it was on the ballot paper. And that was Bob, and they backed Bob. That was our tagline.
That's interesting. And Matthew Goodwin Freeman, you won't have been the only campaign under the Tories that sort of distanced themselves from the Sunak administration, perhaps with not as much success. Another person who did did succeed with a very local campaign was Jeremy Hunt, the former Chancellor, and it was really squeaky bum time for him. Lots of speculation he'd be the first sitting Chancellor to lose his seat, but he was out 6 hours a day, knocking on doors. They were out with the minibuses on election day, driving people to the polling stations. Do you have things in common with your campaign and Jeremy Hunt?
I think when Jeremy was out 6 hours a day, Bob was out most of the day. And he's been doing that not just now, but throughout, before the election even was started. The thing is, unlike others, Bob is out all the time. It's not just at election time. And I think that's what the voters really respected, that he is a face they recognise on the doorsteps, that he does so much for them. I've been lucky to work in Bob's office before, and he has done over 80,000 pieces of casework and make sure that every email, every letter gets a reply. So there's more to it than simply
Matthew,
working hard.
What I think you did, which would appeal to me as a constituent, is you made it about local issues. And it becomes so detached from reality when we all start looking at all sorts of pie-in-the-sky issues that don't really affect us. But the things that affect the people in that constituency, what were they? What were they in particular? What was the minutiae?
We were talking about Bob's track record: more money for our schools, more money for our hospitals, more money for local businesses. Bob's delivered millions of pounds for our local schools. Bob's delivered a new ward at Norfolk Park Hospital and delivered millions of pounds for our local businesses. So we talked about what Bob has done in the local area that people can physically see in front of them. And that's, I think, how we did it. Because you can talk about whatever you want on the national picture, but if people can't see it in front of them, they won't realise that's down to you. And I think that's what the party's got to recognise. People need to see change.
Yeah, and the party obviously needs to regroup, reflect on what went wrong and choose a new leader. I wonder if you'll be getting any calls from anyone to run any campaigns, and if so, who you'd be hoping for?
Look, I'm a member, and I hope the members get a choice, and I think we will get a choice. That's the most important thing. But there's more than just purely the leader. There's the entire structure, the organisation, CCHQ as a whole, and how we reconnect the members on the grassroots to the party at the top. And that's what we've got to do over the next 5 years. We've got to get on with it, but let's not rush, because rush decisions make bad decisions. Let's take our time and get it right so that we can win the next general election. Very interesting to hear all that, Matthew. Thank you. Very good few tips there. I wonder will anybody act upon them and see the difference there. Thanks for your time, Matthew. We'll say goodbye to you this morning.
Right, now we're focusing on Friday, where we'll have live coverage here on GB News on the 12th of July, celebrations for some in Northern Ireland.
GB News' Northern Ireland correspondent Dougie Beattie gives you the background.
On April 18th, 1689, the Jacobites laid siege to the city of Derry. It lasted for 105 days and left 8,000 dead. It is known that even children were involved in the fighting, and one young man would write his place in history.
James MacGregor is known as the Moses of the Scots-Irish. He was born in Magilligan in 1677. Now, we know very little about his family. We know his father was a Captain David MacGregor, probably a yeomanry captain. But during the siege of Londonderry, he, his father, his mother, his brother and sister were all in the city. He becomes notable in the city because he is said to be the boy, 12 years of age, who fires the cannon from the top of St Columb's Cathedral when he sees the ships coming up the river, the Mountjoy, and the two other ships which have broken the boom.
Over the next 9 years, the civil and religious freedoms that so many had fought for were now being denied by church and state.
For Presbyterians in this era, life had become very difficult at the beginning of the 18th century. The Test Act was passed. Now, this really was penal laws against the Presbyterians. And the Presbyterians saw this as betrayal. They had fought for the Williamite Wars, they had supported the government, and now the government was banning them. Presbyterian marriages, Presbyterian funerals were banned, children were declared illegitimate, they had to pay tithes to the Church of Ireland, public office was closed to them, And so many Presbyterians felt aggrieved. They wanted difference. They wanted to get out of this.
Many of those in Ulster saw America as an opportunity to have a new way of life and the religious and civil opportunities that they yearned for. Their leader and pastor was James McGregor.
Now, what do they take with them? They take with them their spinning wheels. They take with them flaxseed. They take seed potatoes. These things will be of benefit to them. All plans are arranged. But one of the saddest things that locally is what we call the living wakes. There were no dead people, but they might as well be dead. That was the night you left. Your family would come, your friends, your neighbours, and they would gather. And there would be hymn singing, there would be music. It wouldn't be a happy occasion.
5 ships would leave from Coleraine and Londonderry, and at the mouth of the Foyle River, Colmore Fort would be the last sight they would have of Ireland. A new world and a new adventure now lay ahead.
And then I'll be jigging about on Friday for the 12th of July and wearing orange as
Just
the
like the Dutch.
Yes.
There you go, seamless link. See what they'll be jigging about as well.
They will be doing that. And we have got the Dutch legend, Raphael van der Vaart. He had a great TV series. I loved it. Van der Vaart. Anyway, he's up next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Greater Manchester, the A665 is partly blocked northbound by an accident on Great Ancoat Street in Manchester, causing delays. On the M40 in Oxfordshire, there's a lane closed southbound after a vehicle caught fire between junctions 11 and 10 from Banbury to Brackley, with long delays towards there, not helped by a breakdown earlier in the queue. On the M4 in Monmouthshire, the inside lane's closed westbound after an accident between junctions 23A and 24 from Labour Services to the Cauldre, causing queues. On the M2 in Kent, there's a lane closed eastbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 5 and 6 from Sittingbourne to Faversham, causing queues. And in Surrey, there are 3 sections of the A24 that are closed northbound where they're dealing with an extensive oil spill. It's closed from the Bear Green roundabout towards Dorking, also between Dorking and the Burford Bridge roundabout at West Humble, and between the Givens Grove and Beaverbrook roundabouts at Leatherhead.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, latest sports news and latest guests you have for us in this Euro 2024 week are?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little bit nervous about tomorrow.
Why?
A little bit nervous.
Why?
I'm a little nervous. England versus the Netherlands. I'm thinking of Dutch Masters. You got your Van Gogh.
Yes.
You got your Rembrandt.
Yes.
Yeah. You got your Cruyff. And you got your Van der Vaart.
Van der Vaart.
Although Dick Van Dyke is not Dutch. I just want to make that clear right now.
And he did
Van der Vaart.
He didn't do the TV series then.
That's not him. No. 109 caps, 25 goals, 3 Euros, couple of World Cups. Morning, Rafa.
Good morning.
Very good to have you on board, Rafa. Could I ask you, first of all, my friend, where do you stand? Are you Netherlands or Holland?
Holland.
Holland up.
OK, we're going to stick with that because these days you've got to be careful with your Netherlands and your Holland. How are you feeling about how your side is playing there? I mean, all the games that you've played, we're a little underwhelmed, to be honest, with England, and maybe it's the same with you over in Holland at the moment, Rafa.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think this is a semi-final that both teams still didn't play the best football on the tournament yet. I think the quality is there, but I think the performance is quite poor on both sides. And we are really lucky, when I speak for Holland, with the draw. I mean, when you become third in the group and then you are facing Romania, then I think you are really lucky. So and then Turkey is also not the best team on the Euros. And then you're in the semi-finals, and now we are facing. For us, the feeling is this is going to be the first big test.
I think that the difference is, Rafa, I just feel, Paul, I don't know about you, but Holland seem to be able to score more, so it seems to be easier for them than England.
Well, what do you think, Rafa? Because we should have all the strikers and should be scoring the goals, but you are looking a little better than you have scored more than we have.
Yeah, I think we have Plan E. That's how we start the game, and that's with Memphis Depay as a striker. Xavi Simons as a number 10, and when that doesn't work, we can put Wout Weghorst, and then we start playing Plan B, more long balls, more crosses inside the box. So we have really two good systems when we can make goals. But it's true, for me, the English team is also really disappointed. When you have so much quality, so much players, they're playing in big clubs, but somehow it doesn't fit together. And we in Holland, of course, hope that it stays like that. But I understand the frustration from the English fans.
Yeah, plenty of time yet. Don't write us off. Rafa, as an England fan, obviously we think we're the best fans in the world. But I have to say there is something unique and special about Dutch fans, all dressed in their orange. We've seen pictures during this, going from side to side. I mean, how important is football to the national psyche?
Yeah, it's so important. And I have to say, when I was a player, there was already also there, but then you don't notice really how it is. But now I'm working for the Dutch television, and before the game I go to the stadium and I see the fans. During the day in the city. It's something special, and this is what football is about. And the whole country is now behind it, especially when we reach the semi-finals. And everybody believes that we can win the whole thing. That's a little bit the Dutch positive arrogance, I always call it. But that's how it is.
Don't worry,
it's not just you.
That's why we like each other.
Exactly, we're probably very similar. Who do you think is going to win this game? I mean, we'll all put our England shirts and Holland shirts aside here and look at it. Who do you think is going to win this game of football tomorrow?
I think when England plays on the top level and Holland plays on the top level, then England will win. So we have to hope that England play like they play the whole tournament, and we just play our game. Then I think we can win. But I have a little bit, I'm a little bit scared that England somehow the pressure is gone. They reach the semi-finals, and now they think, okay, Holland we can really beat, and also not only beat, but also in a good way, in a nice style. So I'm a little bit scared of the game, I have to say, because the individual quality of the players from England are better, I think. But we as a team, we really grow as a team. They are so strong. They fight for every ball. So the spirit is amazing, and of course you can also win games with spirit.
Just finally, Rafa, where do you stand on the referee and the referee row? Jude Bellingham getting involved in all of this. It's a bit of a ref nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, but you know, it's so difficult. Every tournament is almost the same. And I think, especially when it comes to referees, I think the English referees also have really problems, because in England there's so much more allowed than in the other leagues, and that's what you see. In the beginning of the game, there were really tackles against Germany and Spain. Normally it's a yellow card, but then they think, okay, we let it go. And then after 10 minutes, he starts giving yellow cards for less. So, yeah, there's not one line they're following, and that's the problem.
I got to say that we were showing pictures there of the referee, and there were 2 pictures where he was wearing an orange shirt, which does concern me very slightly. Finally, Rafa, are you going to be in the stadium? Are you working at the game? Where are you going to see the game?
Yeah, it's in Dortmund, and my family-in-law lives in Arnhem. It's really close to Dortmund, so I drive today. And so I'm in the stadium tomorrow and work for the Dutch television who's broadcasting the game.
Enjoy it, but not too much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rafa.
Man win.
Appreciate it. Adios. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Ashton, please.
We're now going live via satellite to Germany, Dortmund. Our man Jack Carson. Jack, good morning. How's it looking your end?
Well, it feels like the quiet and the calm before the storm here in Dortmund. This is Hansaplatz, which is one of the main kind of public spaces here in Dortmund. Now, this place later on might well be absolutely packed with England and Dutch fans. 75,000 of them are set to be making their way from the border, which is only about an hour away from here in Dortmund. Around 30,000 fans, it's reported, from England are meant to be coming over today, tomorrow as well, to try and, of course, get a ticket for the game and also try and find somewhere here in Dortmund to enjoy it. But if England enjoy it and how England enjoy it, of course, is all down to Gareth Southgate and how he picks that team. Of course, for the first time in 139 days, Luke Shaw got some minutes in that England side. There'd been some controversy that Gareth Southgate took him in the first place, but he did, and he got his first few minutes, of course, in the quarter-final. He now believes he's fully fit. He said in a press conference yesterday that he's ready to play those 90 minutes. And England did look more balanced when he came on that last period of the 90 minutes and into extra time and, of course, penalties. He didn't take a penalty, but, of course, that didn't really matter with how good England were in the quarter-final at taking them. So, also, how does Gareth stick? Does he stick with that 3 at the back system that meant we looked a little bit better, a little bit more attacking? And how does he neutralise that threat of Cody Gakpo for Holland? He is, of course, one of the joint top scorers at this tournament. He's been in great form. So how, of course, does Gareth Southgate stop him? One of the ways might well be to put Trent Alexander-Arnold, of course, Cody Gakpo's Liverpool teammate, at the right wing-back position to try and neutralise that threat. So we'll have to see how Gareth is set to line up. He's, of course, going to be given a press conference later today, as well as England head into their final day of training before that semi-final.
Okay. Jack, thank you very much indeed. And look at the sun shining on him.
Well, you know, I had a question. How comes he gets to go out there and I'm here? How does that work?
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
We need you here. You're too important.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that what you said to him as well?
Sports news.
Fine.
Yeah. We needed you for Wimbledon.
By the way, I do have one more Dutch master that I didn't mention, and that's Teachin, who won the Eurovision Song Contest in 1975 with Ding Ding a Dong.
Ding Dang a Dong?
Yeah.
Ding Dang a Dong, I want you.
No, it's not that one.
I got the love.
The flower. Ding ding dong. There was a.
No, I don't know that one.
It was an absolute banger.
It was a real. It was a. That's exactly.
That was a clanger.
What time's kick off?
I'll never sing again. 8 o'clock tomorrow night.
8 o'clock tomorrow night.
8 o'clock tomorrow night.
Oh, that'll be. Of course.
Do you know my husband's going to be watching it in Amsterdam?
Oh, is he really?
He's going to be the only Englishman surrounded by Dutchies.
Well, that's going to go.
So that'll be awkward.
Yeah, that is going to be very interesting. But they're lovely over there, right?
They're very friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, unless
good. Thank you very much indeed. Ella Whelan, Alex Armstrong, they've got the papers right after this.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, time for the best part of the show, Our Greatest Britain, where we share amazing people who do amazing things. And this week, that is Dr. Leo Cheng and Reverend Hilary Cheng.
Well, Dr. Chen regularly serves as a volunteer surgeon aboard the Mercy ships in West Africa and has recently served his 17th mission aboard the ships. He volunteers with his wife, Reverend Hilary Cheng, a Methodist minister in the UK.
Thank you for joining us, and what a privilege. So just briefly explain, what are Mercy ships?
Well, Mercy ship provide world-class surgery on the ship, and the ship then sail to these poorest of the poor country because there's no infrastructure to get road or rail there. And we offer free surgery and also education, training of medical staff, and partner with the local or the host nation to build up their surgical and anaesthetic services.
So how long have you been travelling West Africa? You go on all these different ships, different ports, and you treat the needy and the vulnerable. How long have you both been doing this?
20 years.
20 years?
Just over 20 years.
And you take the time to do this out of your own holiday from work. Why do you do it?
Well, because I'm indebted to the education in this country with all the qualification I get. And NHS is great. I love the NHS because without NHS, we see cases that we see in the low-income country. And I want to make use of my hand to help those people who have no way of helping themselves. Because the tumours, the deformities, not just a physical ailment, but it's being ostracised and die early, commit suicide because they've been ostracised by their family.
When you're on the ship, you are seeing the very worst that the country can offer. I find it a great privilege to work alongside these people.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
One of the big things from the last time round, you were talking, guys, about Radio 2 and the demise of Radio 2, or actually it was Ken Bruce who was talking about it. And what did he actually say?
Well, he was saying they were trying to make it cool and they were missing a trick.
It's not cool, he was saying.
And you know what? He knows a thing or two. Last week, when we were winning all of our tricks, Alex Armstrong and Ella Whelan, he was winning just as many as us, and yet he's doing really well for a rival channel. So perhaps the BBC should listen to what he had to say. You guys, Radio 2 fans?
No, look, so I'm a streaming service kind of person. I like my music.
You're the future.
Maybe.
Oh, definitely. I think that's the way everything's going. That's why one of the reasons their audience is taking a hit.
It's all your fault.
Well, obviously it is, yeah. But I think that's the way things are going anyway, right? But for his show, his complaint is that they're trying to make it too modern. And I totally sympathise with that. If his audience don't want to hear modern music, and they're trying to appeal to people like me that are never going to tune into Radio 2, unfortunately. So just keep it to the people that love what they love.
They want to hear greatest hits, really.
Absolutely.
They don't want to hear contemporary stuff.
No,
and then also they've got to look at, the people who they've got on there are obviously very close. They're a bit of a family and whatever. Do you ever listen to it, Ella?
Not massively. I still am relatively loyal to Radio 4. But there's the interesting thing about the move in Radio 2 is this new woman came in as sort of the top job and cleared the decks. She got rid of Steve Wright infamously, which was, ended catastrophisly, and he was so famous and so well liked and was just unceremoniously sacked. But also it came at the same time that I don't know if you remember the furore over the Fairy Tale of New York censorship, in which that word was removed from the the audio. And the reason why Radio 2 did that, they said, our young listeners aren't willing or able to listen to this kind of language.
All 10 of them.
What was the language? Sorry, forgive me. What?
It was the bit where...
sorry, what song?
In Fairy Tale of New York, where you scumbag, you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But the reason was that young listeners are... The inference was better, more enlightened, and they don't like this. And so there was a real gear shift towards a young listener out there, audience out there, that didn't exist. I mean, the extent to which they even listen to Radio 1 or 1 Extra is limited. As Alex says, it's all kind of online, streaming, Spotify, that kind of stuff. So I think they've really shot themselves in the foot because they've lost, particularly with, people like Steve Wright, I've already mentioned, they've lost people in droves.
So we've got Radio 2 going down the pan, and we've got a tea crisis.
We do.
So I don't know what we're going to do. Alex, this is Inside the Times, and this is about the terrible weather in India.
Yeah.
Means that actually there's a huge price rise and a shortage.
Well, we are the biggest exporter of... India's biggest exporter of tea. So we consume 100 million cups a day. Did anyone know? That's insane.
Well,
we are.
We invented it, didn't we? So
well, we didn't. We didn't. Well, we sort of owned it.
We made it posh.
We made it ours. We made it ours. It's our national cup, isn't it? And we drink more tea than any other nationality than the Turkish and the Irish, believe it or not, which is really interesting. But anyway, so this terrible weather has caused a huge shortage in tea being created in India. And they're saying this is the lowest quantity for a decade, 91 million kilograms lost. And so this is going to increase prices of tea, unfortunately, for the rest of us. So 20%, they're saying, which is quite a substantial increase. So inflation all over again, but now on your Tetley tea.
I do wonder, though, if it's still our national warm drink of choice. I feel like coffee has definitely done a bit of a aggressive takeover.
I don't know.
In my lifetime.
Yeah, particularly I'm not. If you looked at what takeaway drinks people get, it's very rare. I'd never get a takeaway tea, even though I'd probably like it because I think I can make that at home, but I can't do all the frothing at home. So, but there's, maybe we need to get a little bit more like the Scottish, a bit tighter, and use the bag a couple of times.
That's my grandma does still, bless her. Nice, double. Everyone shares a tea bag. A big splashing of a serving of milk. It's a really World War II generation.
That's
I love
great.
it. It's
Why
great.
not? Why not?
A bit more sustainable.
Just not like the Americans. I keep seeing these horrendous videos of them microwaving water with the bag in. And very wrong about that.
Not having that.
Ella, what if you're in NIMBY? There's a shock coming your way from Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this in the last hour. I just thought I'd bring it back up because it has been their main focus. And her big speech yesterday is all about planning and house building. And there is this tension, which is that most of the houses who need the biggest housing shortage, most of the houses that are needed are in the south. And that's where the biggest NIMBY sentiment is. So, in and around London, in and around all those sort of relatively safe Tory seats and Lib Dem areas. So yesterday, Rachel Reeves said, I know we might have to suffer a little bit of political pain here. It might be a price that we're willing to pay, which, annoying not just annoying, really annoying the NIMBYs by building around their houses. And by the way, NIMBY means not in my backyard, and the YIMBY means yes in my backyard, and this is the debate. But in actual fact, Labour hasn't committed to do anything like statutory targets yet. And we have to see whether or not they're going to really draw a line in the sand and say we absolutely legislatively, legally require you to build X number.
Well,
or not.
Michael Gove wanted to do that, and he found himself backtracking massively because of his backbenchers. And Labour might well find that they have a similar problem, because when you have this huge majority, you're obviously representing different constituencies than what you're used to, many of whom have a rural outlook and might be very concerned about this.
Yeah, and similarly for Liberal Democrats as well, who are also in quite rural, ex-Conservative areas now. So they actually might find themselves with a little bit of a struggle. They'll definitely have the numbers, but they might get a little bit of pushback. So it'll be really interesting.
Now, Alex, alcohol, though, we were talking about tea sales and whatever, but alcohol may be on the decline, and that has forced Carlsberg, the beer brewers, to buy a UK soft drinks firm. Tell us more.
Yes, so this is from Gen Z. So Gen Z are reportedly drinking 20% less alcohol than millennials like us and older. So that's quite a big shift in the industry. Now, obviously, Carlsberg's a massive company, and they're looking at their forecasts and saying, we're going to lose money if we don't do something. So they've bought Britvic, which is one of the UK's biggest makers of soft drinks, including things like you love, like Robinson's. Robinson's Orange Squash is one of those.
I love squash.
So it makes me wonder whether we're going to see, pubs in the future serving orange juice over pints. But it's a really big shift in society if that's the case. Maybe Gen Z are just more health conscious or don't drink as much for whatever reason. But really quite a big shift in society if that's the case. I suspect the pubs might be worried.
I think they had such a great advertising campaign. Whenever I think of Carlsberg, I think if Carlsberg did breakfast programmes, for example, this would be it. Because, there's obviously something in their advertising campaign that means they're able to buy out other ailing companies.
Would you swap your pints for a J2O?
I'm not a beer drinker, but I wouldn't want to swap out my wine for a soft drink just yet. Maybe that'll happen in old
The
age.
health message gets a bit lost. I mean, it's as if almost that these soft drinks are healthier for you than alcohol, and it's actually quite the reverse. So,
Well, I don't want to be silly about it because obviously everything in moderation, but I do feel a bit disappointed with Gen Z in the anti-drinking thing because, pubs were and should be such a part of a community, and not just a place where you go and binge and it's like disgusting, but for having a drink is a big important social factor in community life.
Yeah.
And that's just getting lost.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you have to go and have a glass of wine, but it's not really authentic if you're going for a fizzy squash, is it?
Can we squeeze in this story before we wrap on Extinction Rebellion? And they're going after the King and turning up at Windsor Great Park for a sort of sit-in for a while. Tell us about this, Alex.
Yeah.
It's the Times.
This is the last weekend in August 30th until September the 1st.
I think this could be quite funny because obviously Charles has got this history of being Mr. Green, and before he became king and therefore formally and constitutionally had to shut up about all his political opinions, he was very big on being almost Mr. Extinction Rebellion, not quite, but he's a big promoter of environmental factors. Extinction Rebellion are saying, how dare you have shut up, despite the Constitution, and they're going to park their paper mache tanks on his lawn and sit it out. And I just think it's an interesting example of how actually Extinction Rebellion's views, so their tactics are extreme, their views are actually relatively mainstream in many political circles. I mean, we adopted the phrase climate emergency on their response to their pushing.
Their argument against Charles is what?
Is that he is being dishonest. They quote his book Harmony, which was something he wrote as the Prince of Wales, which had in it a lot of stuff about the environment, and they say that he should start speaking out, which as king would not be on.
Okay, that would be another popular protest. I don't think. Ella, thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Alex, lovely talking to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Stay with us. Lots more coming your way. We've got Andrew Griffith coming for us. He's survived in the shadow cabinet. There's been a bit of a reshuffle, this sort of interim shadow cabinet. So we'll be speaking to him about the fortunes of the Conservatives. And we'll also be replaying that interview with Catherine Forster after she lost both of her sons on a volcano in Bali on election day last week. It was a bit of a tearjerker, so we're going to replay that for you.
They were found and they were in our studio this morning. So we'll be back with all of that after the weather update. Good morning, Alex Deakin.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us, expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, it may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here, but the heaviest rain further north in this band. And as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south, we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for 1 or 2 showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Greater Manchester, the A665 is partly blocked northbound by an accident on Great Ancoat Street in Manchester, causing delays. On the M40 in Oxfordshire, there's a lane closed southbound where a vehicle caught fire between junctions 11 and 10 from Banbury to Brackley. There are long delays towards there, not helped by a breakdown earlier. On the M4 in Monmouthshire, the inside lane's closed westbound after an accident between junctions 23A and 24 from Deep Magor services to Cauldre, causing queues. On the M2 in Kent, there's a lane closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 5 and 6 from Sittingbourne to Faversham, with queues towards and past there. And in Surrey, 3 sections of the A24 have been closed northbound where they've been dealing with an oil spill. It's closed from the A29 Bear Green roundabout to Chart Lane south at Dorking, from Reigate Road Dorking to the Burford Bridge roundabout at West Humble, and also between the Givens Grove and Beaverbrook roundabouts at Leatherhead. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good morning. The new Prime Minister meets with England's mayors as he concludes his tour of the 4 nations.
With the Commons resuming in a matter of hours and the 75th NATO summit in Washington tomorrow, it's all go for Sir Keir Starmer.
The Prime Minister has vowed to build a real partnership with regional mayors in a show of unity at Downing Street this morning.
Labour gets down to business as new Health Secretary Wes Streeting prepares to meet junior doctors and negotiate to end the strikes.
Lord David Cameron has quit frontline politics as Sunak's shadow cabinet's announced, just in time for the Commons to resume this afternoon.
All eyes on Wednesday's NATO summit as army chiefs call on the Prime Minister to commit to giving 3% of gross domestic product to defence. But where exactly will that money come from?
And to talk about today, some of it heavy. There is a Met Office yellow warning in place for tonight and tomorrow across parts of northern Scotland. But it will be raining everywhere all day today. Join me later for all the details.
1 minute past the hour of 9 on this Tuesday morning. Good morning to you. I'm Eamonn Holmes.
I'm Isabel Webster, and this is GB News Breakfast. So, Sir Keir Starmer has just held a meeting with all 12 Metro mayors in Downing Street.
Now, this comes as the House of Commons is set to return this afternoon. GB News' correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now. Olivia.
There's been a meeting of the Metro mayors in Downing Street this morning because the Labour Party did so well, not only at the general election but the local elections as well. Almost all of the Metro mayors, with the exception of Ben Houchen, the Conservative for Tees Valley, are now Labour. That means that Keir Starmer can have a very sort of open and easy dialogue with them in the way that Rishi Sunak couldn't really. He's beginning with this Council of Metro Mayors. They're going to discuss what ideas they have for helping grow the economy, both in their own regions and around the UK in general. It doesn't sound as though Keir Starmer has actually put money where his mouth is. It doesn't sound as though they've actually been given any more cash. But speaking to a couple of them just here this morning, I'm hoping we might get Ben Houchen over here in a moment, and he should be coming to us next. But they are all sounding pretty chipper about the new Prime Minister and excited about this new partnership. Keir Starmer believes in the sort of devolution project in a way I'm not quite sure that the Conservative Prime Ministers before him did. So this should be a sort of very open dialogue. Whether that will actually help those regions around the country without any extra cash is another question.
Olivia, thank you very much indeed. We're going to go to talk tonight to Andrew Griffith, the Conservative MP, and here we are, the Shadow Cabinet has been named. Andrew, can you give us a bit of an insight into a few new names in there?
Well, today's the first day when we form the official opposition. That's an incredibly important role as part of how you keep this government to account. That's what Parliament is all about. We'll be going then, filing in, sitting on those green benches. And it's an interim shadow cabinet, but we've got a number of people.
Oh dear, we seem to have lost our connections there. We should point out he has been appointed in the Shadow Cabinet as the Shadow Science and Innovation and Tech Minister. We'll see if we can re-establish comms there. But in the meantime, we're going to go back to Olivia Utley, who... we don't have Olivia either. OK, well, we're going to go to the Great British Book giveaway then, because that is a pretty big giveaway.
I was just going to talk about some of the people in the Shadow Cabinet there as well. Familiar names. Oliver Dowden is in there as the Shadow Deputy Leader. Jeremy Hunt stays as the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer there, which is amazing for him because he wasn't expected to win his seat, win his constituency. So great fight back from him. Andrew Mitchell, Shadow Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth.
From Cameron.
Yeah. Well, Cameron was always going to go. He was always going to go. He wasn't going to stay there.
Yeah, it's very difficult for a Lord to hold that post because you can't obviously get into the Commons. And Richard Holden also quit, even though he managed to hold on to his seat as party chair, which I think is quite interesting.
Shadow Home Secretary is James Cleverly. There as well, and then a few names. Victoria Atkins is back in health there, but there's a lot of people who obviously you won't have heard of. So there's some big new names in there. Work and pensions. Mel Stride says there. Damien Hines, Shadow Secretary of State for Education, and so we go on.
Yeah, obviously Grant Shapps lost his seat famously, and he's been replaced by James Cartledge, a relative unknown, I think, in terms of a big name. And as I say, I'm just getting to know that new cabinet. But yeah, that's unfortunate. We can't speak to Andrew Griffith. Maybe we'll be able to reconnect with him.
But we can bring you the Great British Giveaway and your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. It is an incredible £30,000.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, that is a great prize from us to you. Accept it with our love, and remember, it is completely tax-free. 30 grand, it could be yours.
And everybody needs something to cheer them up. This miserable summer weather. It's like we're in the middle of the autumn. I'd take 30 grand as well. That'd be great. You've got to be in it to win it. Just reflecting on politics at the moment, because it's like the first day of term, really, in Westminster. All these Green MPs, not literally as in from the Green Party, but brand new, descending on Westminster, taking up their posts. Lots of bruised and disappointed MPs who unexpectedly lost their seats, had to quickly clear away their desks yesterday. So it's first day of school. They have big school photograph, don't they? Huge number of Labour MPs. Big questions about where on earth they're even going to sit in the Commons. We had Olivia Utley a little bit earlier on. She was joining us from Downing Street. Well, she had Ben Houchin with her, one of the mayors, in fact, the only Conservative Metro mayor to remain in post, and we can speak to him this morning. Welcome to the programme. Good morning, Ben. You've been in and spoken to the Prime Minister this morning.
Olivia's talking.
Olivia's going to talk to him. Great.
Oh, hello. Yes, I'm going to talk to Ben Houchin, who I've got here. You've been in Number 10 this morning speaking to the Prime Minister. Can you tell us a little bit about what the meeting was like, what was said?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, Keir Starmer was kind enough to give me some of his time before the meeting of mayors, having not met him before, and he was very keen to reiterate that he was wanting to work with me. You know, the messages we heard during the campaign, right? He wants to put the country first, party politics second, and to be fair, I reiterated the same thing. If he wants to work with me to be able to get things done for our area, to deliver those growth plans that he sorely needs, if he wants to deliver on his promises to the great British public, then he's going to need people like myself and the other mayors to make that happen. And I think he realised that. He wanted to talk a lot about planning reform, how mayors could be able to help with that, have a growth plans to understand how we could unlock growth to be able to deliver on his plans. He recognises that that can't necessarily all be done from the centre, and that we're going to be key to those plans.
There's a lot of talk about sort of open dialogue with the Metro mayors, etc. Is Keir Starmer actually going to put money where his mouth is? Was there a promise of more money for the Tees Valley this morning, or for any of the other Metro regions?
Well, I think, not to get too technical and boring, but there were definitely signs that there were changes to devolution that he wanted to make to give us more autonomy, to be able to get on and deliver, not to go back to government every day asking for a handout. There was talk of multi-year financial settlements. You know, that has to be worked through in the run-up to what will, I assume, be a fiscal event in the autumn. But it was very positive, actually. I was really pleasantly surprised that he was really energetic, really keen. He wanted to work with us, and he was very open to the idea of much more devolution, which has changed with different prime ministers over the last 10 or 15 years, depending on which one it is. So ultimately, we're going to have to keep him to his word. If he keeps his promises, then it looks very promising for further devolution, and ultimately, it looks very promising that we can get on and deliver for our regions.
The Conservative Party has obviously just suffered this historic defeat, the fewest MPs ever in the party's history. What would you sort of like to see next for the party? Is it time to sort of sit and take stock, or should the party elect a new leader quickly and get on with it?
Well, I think there are two things there. I think the Conservative Party need to learn the right lessons from the election defeat last week. Firstly being, it's not about lurching further to the right or the left. I think the ideological argument misses the point altogether. What we found in the election last week is people didn't think that we were competent of governing anymore. They had lost faith in the fact that we could have effective governance. Therefore, they lost trust in us, and therefore they wanted to change. So that was about effective governance, no more infighting, no more U-turns. That's what we need to concentrate on centrally if we want to be electable again. And that road to redemption can be as long or as short as we choose to make it. And I'm worried that if we're not careful, it could take a very, very long time. When it comes to the leadership contenders, though, I think it's pretty obvious to me who the obvious players are. I mean, it's not any great surprises. There's going to be 5 or 6 of them that everybody's going to expect. There may be some left field candidates that nobody expects, but the idea we should have a very long and drawn out leadership process for 5 or 6 people that we pretty much know what they're about and where they stand within the party would seem to be nonsensical. We need an effective opposition. We need to be able to rebuild the party. We need to start quite quickly. And I think navel navel-gazing for too long will upset the public. They'll think that we're spiralling off into another internal, inward-looking existential crisis. We need to be effective, we need to be ruthless, we need to get back to business, we need to understand what it is to govern and what it is to get back to being able to govern this country again at some point in the future.
And I have to ask you, you are now the most powerful Conservative in the country. Who would you like to see as the next leader out of those 5 or 6?
Well, I think that's debatable. I don't know, it depends who you're speaking to. I mean, it's too early to tell, right? Let's see who declares. Like I said, we've got a rough idea of the obvious candidates. There may be a couple of left field candidates who come in. Let's see. We haven't had yet a readout, as far as I'm aware, from the National Convention of the Conservative Party that kind of set out some of the rules. The 1922 committee, which is the group of MPs in Parliament who do set out the rules for the leadership contest. I think we're electing the chairman today. So let's see what the timeline is. Let's see what the process is, and then we can get into the detail of what the leadership would look like.
So no one specifically you like the look of at this stage?
At the moment, it's too early to be able to make those commitments.
Thank you very much. Really good to speak to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Olivia, and thanks as well to Ben Houchin there. I love how he deflected that question when she said, you are now the most powerful Conservative in the party. Ooh, you know, people might disagree with that. I love it how they sort of panic at these sorts of titles. It's true, Ben. Take it. Own it.
We never panic, never. But we will be back right after the break. Hopefully see you after this.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister. Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Now, we've got a great story to bring you now, which we had a very emotional story which we've edited for you. Our very own GB News political correspondent, Catherine Foster. Last week, she was working on the general elections. She expected to be outside Downing Street Thursday, Friday with the results, but instead, she found herself in a terrible situation, her worst nightmare, after 2 of her sons, Matthew and Andrew, were reported missing, lost in Bali after climbing a mountain.
Well, Catherine endured, as she puts it, the worst day of her life before finally, after 40 hours of no sightings or online locations either, the pair were found. And earlier we spoke to Catherine and her boys.
Actually, it was my idea.
And when did you realise this is not such a good idea?
Oh, quite early on. I think it was like maybe 2 hours in, we were like, should we turn back now?
Yeah.
And we decided to go up, and that was our last mistake, because then we went up the rest of the mountain, phones died, and got lost up there.
So this is a volcano in Bali, and instead of speaking to locals and taking the advice, which would have been hire a guide, make sure you've got expert advice getting up this mountain, you decided to use technology, which lots of people do, and use an app on your phone to help you navigate it. But what went wrong, Andrew?
I think it was just a complete lack of preparation, you know. Just went out there, no power banks, like, we were just completely unprepared and we hadn't done the research.
So your phone ran out of battery and you just didn't know the way down, literally that simple.
Once we were at the top, we were expecting to see, like, tour groups and stuff that we could...
But nobody about?
No one, yeah.
Why was that? Do you know?
The top of the volcano, it was 3,000 metres up, so it was in the clouds.
Yeah.
And the terrain was so sheer, there was no way for us to go around the top to where the tour groups would have been.
Gotcha.
So when we got there, we were just like, well, the risk of trying to go around is much too high.
Well, meanwhile, Catherine was working away. It was voting day on Thursday, and we're not allowed to cover any politics on Thursday, so it was a bit of a lull day for you. And that's when you started to get the bad news.
I woke up at 6 o'clock and they'd arranged a proxy vote from Bali, and I thought, I better check how they want me to vote. So I tried to ring them at 6 o'clock. He didn't pick up. Tried to ring Andrew. He didn't pick up. Thought, they'll get back within a few minutes. They were amazing at keeping in touch. And they didn't. And after about 15 minutes, I thought, I'll go see where they are. I tracked on Find My Phone. And Matthew's last location was 2 days ago at the top of a volcano. And I was a bit worried then, but I thought, oh, it's a glitch, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then I got a text from a friend saying, can you give us a call? A bit worried about them. Then spoke to a girl they'd befriended who was in Sweden, but they'd met on their travels. And she told me that they'd gone up the mountain. By the time I found out, they'd been missing for 30 hours. They'd gone up the mountain on the Tuesday night, British time. This was the Thursday morning, without a guide. And they'd told her it was really hard. And she told them to turn back, but they hadn't. And they'd sent screenshots from this app with this trail that they were following on the app, screenshots of the app in case there was a problem, and a Snapchat of a Matthew avatar at the top. And she said, I know they made it to the top because I could see that his phone had nearly died. But the trail had actually closed many years ago. So the app, we will need to make sure that that gets taken off the app. But, you know, technology saved them in the end because it was the screenshots and it was the messages that they'd sent. But they should never have been without a guide.
And Catherine, for context, you've got 3 children.
Yeah.
You sadly lost your husband just a few years ago, 2021. And there you were, fearing for the lives of your boys. What was running through your mind?
Yeah, I have a 15-year-old and my 90-year-old dad was down staying. He'd been looking after the 15-year-old while I'd been on the election campaign. But my husband had died of a heart attack very suddenly, shortly after I started working here in 2021. So I've literally got the 3 of them. And before they'd gone away, I'd said to them, you know, please be careful. I can't take any more trauma. And on the Monday, I'd spoken to them and I couldn't talk to them for long because I was with the Prime Minister it was a gin tasting, the then Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, on a visit to a gin distillery. I was about to go and taste gin. And I was like, I can't talk to you for long. And they mentioned a hike in passing, but I didn't know the details. And I said to them, look, don't go off on your own. You know, people get lost. Jay Slater, Michael Mosley, go in a group. And Matthew's exact words to me were, Mum, we're not stupid.
Well, thank goodness it ended. It ended well. Ended well, and they were.
I find that hard to watch, even though we did that interview ourselves.
But I was just imagining they were in jungle. Jungle. We're not talking about forest or anything else. We're talking about jungle, and it was pouring with rain, and they were making their way down the side of the mountain, not knowing where they were going, and shouting out, "Help! Help! Help!" And eventually, they heard these voices coming back at them, and it was a search and rescue party, and that is just miraculous that they bumped into them.
And because of all the rain, they followed the path of this kind of river that
Flowing
appeared,
water.
and then it suddenly turned into an enormous waterfall with a sheer drop, so they couldn't go any further on their way. I mean, it was really touch and go. Poor old Catherine, after everything she's been through, we pay tribute to her. What a wonderful mum. What naughty boys.
I know.
But what a lovely happy ending.
I tell you, I'm fed up hearing so many sad stories of people on holiday going walking, going hiking, going whatever. Just stay by the bloomin' pool, most of you, right? Anyway, 12th of July. It was old, but it was beautiful. On Friday in Northern Ireland. And so many people will be talking about the sash their father wore. Well, our reporter Dougie Beattie has been looking not only at the traditions of the celebrations, but how they're reflected and their context around the world.
On April 18th, 1689, the Jacobites laid siege to the city of Derry. It lasted for 105 days and left 8,000 dead. It is known that even children were involved in the fighting, and one young man would write his place in history.
James MacGregor is known as the Moses of the Scots-Irish. He was born in Magilligan in 1677. Now, we know very little about his family. We know his father was a Captain David MacGregor, probably a yeomanry captain. But during the siege of Londonderry, he, his father, his mother, his brother and sister were all in the city. He becomes notable in the city because he is said to be the boy, 12 years of age, who fires the cannon from the top of St Columb's Cathedral when he sees the ships coming up the river, the Mountjoy, and the two other ships which have broken the boom.
Over the next 9 years, the civil and religious freedoms that so many had fought for were now being denied by church and state.
For Presbyterians in this era, life had become very difficult at the beginning of the 18th century. The Test Act was passed. Now, this really was penal laws against the Presbyterians. And the Presbyterians saw this as betrayal. They had fought for the Williamite Wars, they had supported the government, and now the government was banning them. Presbyterian marriages, Presbyterian funerals were banned, children were declared illegitimate, they had to pay tithes to the Church of Ireland, public office was closed to them, and so many Presbyterians felt aggrieved. They wanted difference, they wanted to get out of this.
Many of those in Ulster saw America as an opportunity to have a new way of life and the religious and civil opportunities that they yearned for. Their leader and pastor was James MacGregor.
Now, what did they take with them? They take with them their spinning wheels, they take with them flax seed, they take seed potatoes. These things will be of benefit to them. All plans are arranged. But one of the saddest things that locally is what we call the living wakes. There were no dead people, but they might as well be dead. That was the night you left. Your family would come, your friends, your neighbours, and they would gather. And there would be hymn singing, there would be music. It wouldn't be a happy occasion.
5 ships would leave from Coleraine and Londonderry, and at the mouth of the Foyle River, Colmore Fort would be the last sight they would have of Ireland. A new world and a new adventure now lay ahead.
The 12th is on Friday. We're back tomorrow from 6. Have yourselves a good day.
Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Some places having some fine weather today, but for most of us expect rain. Could be quite heavy, and for many it's going to be a cool day as well. Already raining across much of northern England, North Wales, that rain spreading into Northern Ireland and southern parts of Scotland. Further south, the rain is more on and off, with parts of the Midlands largely dry through this morning. Some heavy showers possible across the far southeast of England, and actually northwest Scotland generally staying fine through the day. Some good spells of sunshine here. If it brightens up later over northern England and parts of the Midlands, feeling quite warm and humid, that may spark some heavy and thundery showers. But for much of the day, southern and central Scotland's going to be wet, and that rain is drifting up into northeastern Scotland. And once it arrives here, it's going to last through the night and indeed for most of tomorrow as well. But for most of today, at least, the Highlands and the Western Isles and the Northern Isles of Scotland dry and bright. Most of Northern Ireland, though, dull and soggy. That rain will be heavy in places here too. Brightening up over northern England and the Midlands this afternoon. Quite warm and humid here, but that could spark some thundery showers. Quite a lot of cloud across the south with some showers here. But the heaviest rain further north in this band, and as I said, once it sets in over particularly northeast Scotland, likely to last through the night and for much of tomorrow as well. Still some heavy showers this evening over northern England, and we'll see more showers coming in through the night across parts of the south, staying fairly wet too for much of Northern Ireland. Quite a warm night with temperatures in towns and cities holding up at 14 or 15. The rain persisting over parts of northern Scotland. We do have a Met Office yellow warning in place. That rain could cause some disruption. A different day over northwest Scotland with outbreaks of rain here. Slowly further south we'll see something a bit brighter, some good spells of sunshine, but still a potential for one or two showers, staying fairly cloudy with some showery rain for Northern Ireland and northwest England. Some brightness in the south, seeing temperatures in the 20s.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 33 and 32A towards the A1M, causing queues. Greater Manchester, the A665 is partly blocked northbound by an accident on Great Ancoat Street at New Islington in Manchester, causing delays. Mersey Ferry suspended because of a technical problem. On the M1 in Leicestershire, there's a lane closed northbound for emergency repairs between junctions 20 and 21 from Lutterworth to Leicester. On the M40 in Oxfordshire, there's a lane closed southbound where a vehicle caught fire earlier between junctions 11 and 10 from Banbury to Brackley, taking around half an hour in the queues. On the M26 in Kent, there are long westbound delays towards the M25 again this morning because of roadworks. And in Surrey, the A24 is closed northbound from the Bear Green roundabout to Chart Lane South in Dorking. Then again,